What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Week 5 Friday afternoon AMA. Welcome in, everybody, to the DLF YouTube channel. We didn't have any internet issues this week. We didn't have any technical issues. Hopefully that that continues. But appreciate everybody for coming on in and hanging out for this next probably 2 hours. Honestly, I will say I was thinking about this throughout the week, and I think I'm going to try to limit or even just not dive really deep into like, hey, what move should I be making here on this team? How can I improve this team? Blah blah blah. I love those questions and more of like a comment setting and for videos or on the DLF Discord. But from a live stream perspective, it's a little bit harder to do because I can't dive in as much as I really want to. Like I want to know what your team looks like, what their teams look like, stuff like that. So it's a little bit harder to do those kind of trade or do those kinds of questions um, than in this type of a format. So I might say if we do have any of those like what move should I make, do this, blah blah blah. That might be a little bit more difficult for me to do moving forward. And then yeah, as Jamie mentioned, we'll be rapid firing these. And I'm sure if I get out faster than a 2.5 hour stream, I'm sure my wife would appreciate it with the toddler as well. But also I got work to do every week too. So it's blah blah blah. Anyway, those are all my problems. You don't care about my problems. Peter's in here. He says, "Happy Friday. Love these AMAs, but I have a noon meeting for work. So he's gonna have to tune in later. But we do have a question for Peter, so we can get him answered. Then he'll check in back after the fact. I will say, what's up, Jamie? Welcome in. Welcome in. Antonio, happy Friday. Welcome in. Got to say hello to everybody. I can't not say hello. Nick says, happy Friday, Addison. Caleb, no invite, bro. Bruh, don't you have work? Aren't you working? Appreciate you being in here, though, Caleb. And I think we should get you on one of these. It was fun whenever Justin and I would do them. Then it just kind of became me because his work took over. So maybe we'll get you in here, Caleb. Anyway, back to Peters' question. He says running back room is a mess with early injuries and now bye weeks. Also going to be hoping that Woody Marks is for real sooner than I would have liked. Who are you guys you would target for second rounders plus? League economy is higher on running backs. He has Bijan, Connor, Benson, Marks, Carter DeMarcado, Blue Tootin. Okay, so you got hit with some. You definitely did get hit with some injuries. At least you have the both guys behind Trey Benson. You have Bashal Tootin, who could maybe be coming up if anything were to happen to ETN. Like the young guys, but need some usable players. Pollard, Monty Range, maybe in Rashad White for the short term. Pollard and Monty were the first two names that I immediately thought of. Jalen Warren could maybe be another option. Is he going to play this week? I assume he is. I thought I saw he was practicing. Get major update on he was he is expected to play against the Cleveland Browns. If there were a game this week. So he's not practicing because of the bye week. Duh. But I thought I that was the report that I thought I saw was that he would be ready for the next game. So Jalen Warren, not that he would help you this week, but moving forward, it might be rough going against the Cleveland Browns. So maybe you want to hold off on that one too. You might get 2 weeks without having to pay for Jalen Warren, and then you get him for the remainder of the year. Those would be those are the names. I mean, Alvin Kamara is not like a terrible buy if you could just get him for like a late second. I know a lot of people are really in on Kendre Miller right now, and I love Kendre Miller coming out of college, but I still think that Kamara is the lead back for now. Same thing kind of with like DeAndre Swift. It really just seems like that he's the only way he's going to lose his job is if they trade for a running back, which could happen. Maybe they go get a Breece Hall. Maybe they go get a Tony Pollard. Maybe they'll go get I can't even think of who else, an Alvin Kamara type of a player. J.K. Dobbins is kind of in that same range as well, that you could just try to see what you can get. If you can get any of those players and how expensive would they be? So like, do the normal, like shop around, see what's going on. If you know that you could pay a late second for just Tony Pollard versus paying a second and a third for David Montgomery, or, maybe you could pay some other like a Jaden Blue and a third for Jalen Warren, maybe you get Jalen Warren that way, and maybe that's better than just paying an outright second. So, but those are basically the names that I'd be looking at. I'm looking. You can throw Javante in there if you want. Jordan Mason. Maybe you could throw Chuba Hubbard in there with the injury this week that he's now out. Um, that maybe you could get him for a little bit cheaper. So those three would be the highest, I would say, in terms of price point. Then you would get to Monty and Warren, Dobbins, Pollard, those kinds of running backs. And maybe while you're at it, you could see if you can squeak out any other handcuffs. Like, can you go get Isaiah Davis now with Braylon Allen's injury? Can you pull away like Rashad White? I don't think is a bad name either. But can you pull away a Brashard Smith now that he's kind of seems like he's going to be working more into the offense? Maybe you could pull away a. I'm just scrolling Keep Trade Cut right now. For any of these. And Emmanuel Wilson would be another name. He seems like he's the for sure backup behind Josh Jacobs. Maybe it's just a shot on Devin Singletary in case anything were to happen to Cam Scadaboo, because that dude runs like the freaking like why am I forgetting what his name is? Crap. Juggernaut from Marvel. That's what he runs like. He gives himself CTE and his opponent CTE. So maybe something were to happen while Tyron Tracy's still out to Cam Scadaboo, and then Devin Singletary is the only backup or only starter in New York. Those are the names that I was thinking of. So yeah. Start two in my dynasty league: Andrews, Hawkinson, Waller, Taylor, Theo Johnson, Brenton Strange. I would play. Ooh, this is a good question. I think I would play Mark Andrews and hope that Cooper Rush leans on him a little bit more. And then I would probably play Darren Waller for the target share upside without Tyreek Hill. I'm not there yet on Theo Johnson. I'm not really in on TJ Hawkinson. He's, had way more bad games than good games this year, with and without Carson Wentz, with and without JJ McCarthy. We've got I like Mason Taylor. He was a sneaky start for me for the 4-for-4 side. So I don't mind that one, but I think I would still prefer the kind of known of Mark Andrews, at least in that offense and what they're going to have to do, because Cooper Rush is going to have to probably throw a little bit more than Lamar, because Lamar can get it done with his feet, obviously. And then go with Darren Waller, I think would be my two picks. Let's see. What does John Paulson say about this one? So Paulson has Waller at 12, Strange at 13, Andrews at 14, and Hawkinson at 15. So, and then he's got Mason Taylor at 23. So he's kind of throwing Mason Taylor to the side. And the decision really just seems to be from that 4-pack of Waller, Strange, Andrews, Hawkinson. He would say go Waller, Strange. I'm kind of looking at Waller, Andrews. They're not all really differentiated by that many points. It's all like tenths of a points and projections. But Waller is his top one, and he was one of my two. So I feel like we would agree on Waller, and then it's just Strange or Andrews. Kansas City is a tougher defense than Houston, and maybe you have to rely on Mark Andrews a little bit more if you have the backup quarterback for Cooper Rush than all the Brenton Strangeness. That Jacksonville, the pass catchers can be in 1,500 different ways. So I would play Waller and Andrews is me. And then DeMarcado, Carter, Harvey, or Strange in a 1.5 tight end premium. I think I would probably go with Carter and Brenton Strange in this one. You get the extra premium. And then instead of playing both Cardinals running backs, because maybe they both could be good. Maybe I feel like the likelihood is that one is better than the other. Than it is both are really good or both are really bad. I feel like, playing both seems negative to me. So I would make the bet on one of the two. I think personally, I do lean towards Michael Carter a little bit more, just based on all of the practice reports and his own, him saying that he's starting this week. I don't know if that's actually what he meant or if he's just playing. So I would lean with Michael Carter and then Brenton Strange with a premium. And then we can also start 3 in this dynasty between Henry, Hawkinson, Strange, and Waller for Jamie. I can also activate Fannin and drop a scrub like Elijah Moore. Not sure if you necessarily. I would play Hunter Henry. I would play Darren Waller, and I would play Brenton Strange. And Fannin on in Paulson's rankings is behind TJ Hawkinson as well. So no need to elevate Fannin this week on off of your taxi squad. And yes, it does seem like you love hoarding tight ends in Dynasty. Keon Coleman or Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt in PPR. I lean JCM in this one just for it doesn't even seem like it's all that much volume, but it's at least somewhat of a volume. He is flex 64. Keon Coleman is flex 67. So Paulson has them pretty much back to back as well. He does have Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt ahead. And I would play Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. Somebody is messaging me for things for work. So now I got to do this. Let's see. I'm like the overlay guy. So I've got to make another overlay for a different show that's starting in 15 minutes. I can't just work. You've got to be can't just have the fun while you're doing work, right? You got to. Sorry, I'm trying to fill time while I'm also doing this too. I see the super chat. I'll get to the super chat in just a hot minute. Because I'm trying to see, is there a different question that I can answer while I'm doing this? No, I would say no. So I would say pause for half a second as I get in here. Because I need player QDFS. Sorry. As I said, I am making an overlay for another stream. Oh, wait. And we will be back in 5, 4, 3, 2. One. All right. All right. Super chat time. Sorry. Duty calls. Sir Burks the second with the $5 super chat. Thank you so much for the super chat and for your support here, man. What do we got here? She says, "Sup, Addy? What's going on, man? Waddle plus Kelsey for Scattaboo and Kittle still hung up on it. How do you view Scat and Kittle rest of season? Is Scattaboo the starter? Is Waddle a hold? Redraft setting. All right. So in a redraft, I would take Kittle over Kelsey, so I feel pretty good on that one. I do like Jalen Waddle in this new role, obviously as the wide receiver one now for Miami, and we have seen him succeed in that role previously, though it feels like we are a couple iterations of Miami Dolphins offenses removed from, that 2021 rookie season for Waddle, and we haven't really seen him back in that wide receiver one role since because Tyreek's been pretty much an Iron Man. But we have seen Tyreek's success over multiple years still in this kind of similar offense. I do think Scattaboo is the starter moving forward. I think that he's just played himself into the RB1 role. And I messed up the overlay. And so I do think that Scattaboo is the RB1 moving forward. I mean, he looks so good. That it's hard for me to believe that they just kind of really go back to it being like a 50-50 split. because Scadaboo can do everything that Tyrone Tracy can do. And that's kind of like that was the idea coming into this, was that Scadaboo is fantastic on the ground in some ways that Tyrone Tracy just wasn't. And then he also has the receiving upside that Tyrone Tracy does have, but if he can do all the other stuff simultaneously, he doesn't they can just play him and not have to, you know, really tip their hand in terms of what they're doing, and just kind of have the same running back there. And he's looked phenomenal. I mean, he's breaking tackles, he's catching passes, he's scoring touchdowns. Like it works in New York. So I'm pretty comfortable and I'm also worried about Kelsey simultaneously, like to where I said that like Kittle is better than Kelsey for the rest of the season. I think there's a world where Kelsey is just really unplayable when Rashee Rice comes back, and you've got Rice and Worthy and then Kelsey as like the third person in that kind of rung. Not to mention that they have the options now to throw it to Juju as the wide receiver 3, Tyquan as the wide receiver 3. Maybe Pacheco gets better. Maybe Brashard Smith starts eating into some workload because of, just his pass catching ability. And then that kind of takes some stuff away from Travis Kelsey as well. And if he's not like the primary goal line guy in the receiving game, there's a world where the upgrade from Kelsey to Kittle is so much higher because of Kelsey being really hard to play and Kittle being, a top 3 fantasy tight end for the remainder of the year, that I think that's worth moving from Waddle to Scadaboo and having, even if you have question marks about what is Scadaboo's role whenever Tyrone Tracy comes back, there's a world where Scadaboo is just as good as what he's doing right now when Tracy's back. But then you're also getting the massive tight end boost from going from Kelsey to Kittle, especially if Kelsey is really like not great with Rashee Rice back and with everything else is how this offense is kind of evolving. So I would hate, I don't love moving off of Waddle necessarily, but I think in this particular trade, I do think it's worth it to move on from Scadaboo to move on to Scadaboo and George Kittle from Waddle and Kelsey. So yeah, I would take the Scadaboo and George Kittle side here for the rest of the year. And appreciate the $5 super chat, man. Thank you so much. So now I've got to find where I left off. Had a contending roster coming into the season, lost Neighbors, CD, Hill, Tracy, Allen, and Caleb Johnson. Now I'm forced to quickly rebuild for next year. I have Scat and Swift. Would you send Hubbard away for the 201? I know he was one of your guys. I also have Brooks, so plenty of potential at the running back spot, but no stud. Yes, I would. I'm comfortable if you're kind of entering into a soft rebuild / a reload, looking more at 2026. I'm totally fine sending away Chuba for the 2.01. That was around the price point where I was already buying into him already and where his value kind of was heading into the season. I was willing to pay a late first if you believed that you were, that much of a contender and you wanted another running back and you wanted to pay what you were projecting was your late first, 110, 111, 112, something like that. I was willing to pay that for Chuba. But his price point in terms of actual value, I feel like was somewhere around that 2.01 range. So I feel like you're getting pretty solid market value on him, to where you're cashing out after you had him, you were trying to figure it all out. But if you're looking at 2026 now, and you can get what you believe to be an early second, potentially the 2.01, I would take Chuba Hubbard. I would trade Chuba Hubbard away for that pick to kind of kickstart and move you into this kind of more long-term approach on your roster. So yeah, I'm good with it. As a strong contender and having Devonta and T as my 3 and 4, which one are you trying to move and for what? Already tried to deal for Waddle and got it shut down. I would instead, and this might depend on who you have behind them, I would trade both of them in a 2-for-1 deal and try to get one just better wide receiver. I think it's going to be nearly impossible for you to try to find ways to pivot off of either one of these two guys, unless you tried to buy low on like Rashee Rice before he comes back, or buy low on Ladd McConkey or something like that. But like if you could package Devonta Smith and T. Higgins, could you just get Nico Collins? Could you just get Drake London? Could you just get Roma Dunze or Jackson Smith and Jigba? Or maybe you could buy low on a CeeDee Lamb. Maybe you could add something else and then go get Amon Ra. Like those are that's the thinking that I would rather have is instead of just trying to pivot off of each one of these two guys individually, can you just package both of them in a trade and go up and get just one top 10 very much better guy? Because it's not just about doing that 2-for-1 because you got to include uh you can technically think of it as whoever your wide receiver 5 is. Let's say your wide receiver 5 is just Keon Coleman, we'll say, or somebody like that. Or maybe it's like Calvin Ridley. So you're not just dealing Devonta and T for, we'll say, Nico Collins. You're technically dealing both of them for Nico Collins and Calvin Ridley, or whoever your wide receiver 5 is, who is now entering your starting lineup. If you're starting Devonta and T Smith every single week, and then you're consolidating them down into just one starter spot, it actually would probably end up working if you think of it along those same lines, that you're not giving up anything in points per game on your starting lineup, but you might actually be gaining something because Devonta Smith is wildly inconsistent. T. Higgins is wildly inconsistent now without Joe Burrow. And you can just move over to one guy who week in and week out is just going to see 8, 9, 10, 11 plus targets every single week, essentially, which stabilizes your ceiling and your floor. And then you're also adding in, maybe it's an upside guy, and you can just kind of stream your wide receiver 4 spot or whatever it is if you are starting that spot. But you can if you get the upside from that position as well as the stability from your better one wide receiver and the ceiling from that better one wide receiver, that's what I would be looking to do, is kind of doing a 2-for-1. So see, like, basically look at all the teams in your league, and maybe some guys who are rebuilding a little bit. Maybe they just have that one really good wide receiver and then not much else behind them. You might be able to try to convince them that these two wide receivers are better than that one individual wide receiver, especially from a more long-term standpoint. And then you get that one individual stud wide receiver. Will, we kind of ran down through this with Peter's question just a little bit ago. So it would be, to me, there's not like a one best. It's just which one of these guys can you actually get, or which one of them can you get for the cheapest. So it's, a grouping of Javonte and where was I just at? Javonte, Mason, maybe it's Woody Marks, maybe it's Chuba, maybe it's Monty, Jalen Warren, maybe it's Dobbins still. Maybe it's DeAndre Swift, maybe it's Tony Pollard. Those are essentially the guys that I'd be looking at. Maybe it's Rachaad White for the next week or two. Even though I don't really think that he has anything. I think Bucky's injury is severe enough now, but it's not more of like a multi. Maybe it's 1 to 2 weeks. Maybe he's out this week and next week, but then he's back in week 7. So I don't know if that's necessarily worth it to go buy Rachaad White for that. But those would be the names that I would be going to look for. And if you want to take a shot on Kendre Miller for him just taking over the backfield over Alvin Kamara for the remainder of the year, or Kamara gets traded at the deadline, I'm not opposed to that either. Same with kind of Brashard Smith taking over more workload in that Chiefs backfield, a la what we're seeing now from Woody Marks, So if you can get both those guys for cheap as well, it might not be a bad thing. Nathan's on a contending team was just offered Ladd and London for Tet, 26 first and a second. Oh no. I think I would do this. I would take London over Tedero McMillan, and then I would trade a first and second round pick for Ladd McConkey right now. So I think I would take London and Ladd. If you wanted to, maybe you could try to haggle it and then knock that second off, or maybe knock it down to just a third. I could understand that if you just wanted to kind of do a little bit of counter offerings and keep it with the core of Ladd, London, Tet first. Assuming that first isn't early as well, because maybe if that first is early, I could see you saying that you would prefer maybe 1 or 2 wide receiver prospects in this class over Ladd's potential situation, depending on what they do with Keenan, or if you get one of the top like running backs as well, I could see that player being better than Ladd for Dynasty. So if this was a really early first, I might shy back towards the Tedero McMillan side. But assuming that that's a mid to late first, if you want to haggle a little bit and say not that second down to a third, or maybe take some other player or something like that, I could get on board with those trades too. But as it is right now, I would probably still take the Lad and London side on this one. I traded Puka for Genty, Kirk, and McMillan in a terrible rebuild, trying to get some values. I've been crying ever since the season started. Uh-oh. I I wonder why you traded away a wide receiver for a running back in a rebuild. That is my question. I don't know why. I don't know what the process was behind that one. Um, but I mean, Genty is not a bad asset still. At least it's not like, hey, I did this for Caleb Johnson and a first or something like that, and then now you're completely screwed. At least you still have Ashton Genty. Maybe you can then just flip him for another wide receiver. Um, but yeah, Puka is probably the wide receiver one in Dynasty right now. Um, yeah. Njoku or Gadsden this week. Kraft is a start on bye. I would go with David Njoku, but I don't love it. Gadsden's usage is just still kind of a little bit weird. Njoku at least still is getting, snaps, routes, all that kind of stuff, even if he's splitting with Harold Fannin a little bit. And who knows, maybe Dylan Gabriel, there's always that narrative of like the rookie QBs, like their tight end a little bit more. We kind of saw it with Jackson Dart, to where Theo Johnson, I believe, had his best fantasy day of the season last week in Dart's first start, primarily because of the touchdown. But I mean, when you get down into this low at the tight end position, you're kind of hoping for a touchdown. So maybe Njoku catches one, or maybe, Gabriel just likes to throw it to him a little bit. And he has, 4 catches for 40 yards or something like that. So that's, yeah. Paulson also has Njoku over Gadsden. It's not that far off, but he has Njoku above him. Ladder Rice straight up trade. I would take Rice. There's at least the upside that he is the wide receiver one still in Kansas City. So I'm cool with having Rice over Lad McConkey. But I still really love buying Lad. I think he's one of the ultimate buy lows right now, if you can even still buy low. And especially like before Sunday, because the Commanders, it feels kind of like a perfect storm of like, it's been 4 weeks now. Lad hasn't done well, but he's still getting good volume. And it just kind of needs to come together a little bit. The Commanders are really bad on defense against pass catchers, especially against slot receivers. And so we might see not like a course correction back to Lad, but it's just, it kind of, the pendulum has swung so far this way that I wouldn't doubt if it swung back that way. And that could start this week. So, and if he does have a really good week this week, it might be harder to buy him, especially from a dynasty standpoint. It might be harder to buy him because now we see the upside of Lad, even in this offense right now with Keenan Allen. Then, of course, we'll be talking ourselves into it. The closer we get to the end of the year, Keenan Allen's a free agent. What is Lad going to be like back in that role where he was already successful in that role? And then Quentin Johnson is just really good, but they're still passing as much. And I think Lad's value right now is at an ultimate depressed point to where I think he's a phenomenal buy. But I would still take the upside of Rashee Rice over Lad right now, because I think if Rice comes back and is the wide receiver one and just kind of gets placed right back into the role and the usage that he had prior to getting hurt, that's a top 10 dynasty wide receiver. Like, the upside of that happening for the remainder of the year, I think outweighs the production that we've already seen from Lad McConkey. In some ways, you're waiting for both these guys to get back to their production, but and for Rice, it feels like it's sooner rather than later, because it could be in 2 weeks. Whereas with Lad, Keenan's still there for the remainder of the year. Maybe Quentin Johnson is, like having this third year massive breakout. And now he's the new Nico Collins, the new Devontae Adams, like that type of a wide receiver, and that's going to hurt Lad for the remainder of the year. Anyway, long story short, I'll take Rashee Rice. Rob finally made it to one of these in a while. Would you say Scadaboo is a sell high or a keep? I'm quite high on him, and I like to see, but maybe it's just rose tinted glasses. No, I'm with you. I think that this is what you were hoping for when you drafted Cam Scadaboo in potentially the early to mid second of rookie drafts. It was kind of like that that guy who fell to day 3, who probably shouldn't have because his profile was really good. He was in a really good situation where he could climb the depth chart. Of course, it took an injury to get there, so I think that's maybe why we're a little bit skeptical because he didn't just outright beat Tyrone Tracy like Bucky just kind of like outright beat Rashad White, but it required an injury to get there. But I think that this is just the story of Cam Scadaboo. I think that he's going to be a pretty good fantasy player for the remainder of the year. I mean, we could readjust once we get into the offseason because the narrative is always that day 3 running backs, even when they look good, it is hard for them to kind of maintain that role. And then of course they're going to be battling the whole like, oh, does he get replaced in the draft? Oh, probably not because they still have Tyrone Tracy. Oh, probably not because they have so many other needs. But the NFL can be weird sometimes with these day 3 picks. I personally believe that Cam Scadaboo is better than a random day 3 running back that's kind of coming out. Um, like I think Woody Marks is a better sell high at this moment than Cam Scadaboo. I still wouldn't sell Woody Marks right now because I think he's going to be good for the remainder of the year, and you might get better value for him um, in December or January or February. But I think that he's going to be a guy that I am more willing to sell high in the offseason because of the day 3 running backness of him versus Scadaboo. So I think Scadaboo is a really good player to just hold on to and ride out the production for the remainder of the year. And I think that he's going to probably has really good chances to be the starting running back for them next year and then be great. Moving forward in 2026 with a year 2 Jackson Dart, Malik Neighbors off of the ACL injury, maybe another wide receiver, maybe a better offensive line. Things can definitely get better for Scadaboo for sure. So I would keep him. Evan, happy Friday, my man. Half PPR start 3 out of Genty, Judkins, Scadaboo, Harvey, and Marks. All right. Well, so Ashton Genty for sure, Judkins for sure, and so then I'm kind of throwing Harvey out. So it's between Scadaboo and Marks, the 2 names that I was literally just talking about. Let's see, what does Paulson say? Paulson actually has Judkins ahead of Genty, which I don't necessarily disagree with. And then he's got Scadaboo ahead of Woody Marks. They're separated by 0.8 of a fantasy point by 0.8 points. But Scadaboo's RB16, Woody Marks is RB19. Scadaboo has a slightly worse matchup, just given the fact that Baltimore's rush defense has been kind of suspect. Their defense in general has been kind of suspect. But they both get kind of receiving work. I mean, it's not to say that Scadaboo has a bad matchup. He plays the Saints. So if the Giants are winning for that game too, I went to Scadaboo initially over Woody Marks for the week. And I'm glad Paulson was there as well. So Genty, Judkins, Scadaboo would be mine and Paulson's 3 for this week. Will, any tips for trades in a new league? Our group moved from redraft to dynasty. Everyone seems to be trade averse, and I have a huge hole at RB2. Tips for trading in a new league. I think what's going to be difficult probably is people might be scared of trading because they don't understand the dynasty values yet. Like if you're coming from a group, you said that you moved from redraft to dynasty. So if they've never played dynasty before, I could see them not understanding the values and then thus being scared of doing trades. So you might have to overpay to get a deal done, which I have done in the past. I have a home redraft league where I have to overpay a lot of the times in trades to get an actual deal done. It doubles for me a little bit because it's a whole group of like my friends from high school, and then they know what I do for a living, and so it gets into like why do you want this guy? Maybe I should actually like this. Like I should keep this guy if you want him, that kind of thing. So it's a little bit harder for me. And maybe that's a reason why I have to overpay. But I also think another reason is because we kind of had that same thing when we started this dynasty league 10 years ago now. That trades were kind of hard to do at the beginning, especially around draft picks and stuff, because people just didn't know how to value them and what to do. And then they saw one person like make a really bad trade, like they would trade like a first for some wide receiver 3 type of player, and then that first ends up being like Christian McCaffrey, you know what I mean? Like, so I think that happened a couple of times in our league as well. So then people got even more scared of trading away first, but it also helped to educate everybody in terms of this is how you properly value first round picks, second round picks, players that are aging, players that are up and coming, players in between. So just learning the overall dynasty landscape for values, I think is the biggest learning curve for a lot of new dynasty players. So trying to navigate trades with players who don't know how to properly value players is probably means that you have to overpay to get deals done, because that's what makes them feel the most confident about doing that deal. So not like a major overpay. Like I'm saying, you're gonna have to trade like a first round pick just to get Alvin Kamara on your team, just to fill your RB2 hole. But it's probably going to have to be something along the lines of multiple second round picks, or a player that they really like and a second, or a player that they really like and a third, kind of a deal, to where to you it feels like the value and probably the smart thing to do is to just keep your side. But if you really need to fix that RB2 hole as a contender, and you need to just get a deal done, that's probably the best way to go about it, is just overpaying until everybody eventually just educates themselves enough on value. That's at least how I think that's what I think would happen, is happening in your league, is that they just don't understand value necessarily. Um, and why they're a little bit scared to trade. So it might come with you. Probably have to have some longer conversations with some of these guys to get deals done. Maybe you show them some trade tools, just so that they kind of understand what's going on. Not to say that like, oh, you need to take this deal because this trade calculator shows you that you're winning, but it's just kind of like, hey, like, here's why this trade makes sense for you, why it makes sense for me. I think we can get a deal done. If you draft the right guy in the second round, or draft the right guy in the first round, you could be a lot better than I am, but this is kind of where we're at. Might need to come with a little bit of an education on your side as well towards them. If you're, obviously familiar with Dynasty than all the other guys. Great question, though. Do you have a brother who also does fantasy football content? I do not. Well, I do have a brother, but he does not do fantasy football content. I'm curious on if you saw somebody and they thought that I was related to that person, or if you're just asking just out of the blue. No, my brother he's a graphic designer. He's a couple years younger than me, and then graduated with like kind of like he's been I don't know what his degree was necessarily, but he's always been phenomenal at drawing. He got my dad's drawing ability from that one. I got my dad's athleticism. My brother got, not to say he's unathletic, but I got the athleticism and sportsness from my dad, and then he got the drawing aspect from my dad as well. And so he went into the more like graphic arts, graphic designer. He's a musician. He does all that kind of stuff. And no, he's not interested in fantasy football or sports really in general, outside of whenever he would play at football games in high school for the band. That's my brother versus me, the sports guy. Caleb Johnson panic meter. In redraft leagues, it's like a 12 out of 10. In dynasty leagues, I'm probably at a 6 out of 10. Yeah, I'm probably in between. Maybe a 6.5 is probably where I would label myself as a panic meter for Caleb Johnson, because I still think that there could be upside long term. Because I do still just believe that he's a better running back absolutely better than Kenneth Gainwell, despite what happened on last Sunday. And I think that he's a better all around running back than Jaylen Warren. And I think they might get to a point to where they just need him to. They're just going to give him the ball just to see what he can do, and kind of readdress if they need to attack the running back position again, or if Caleb Johnson can be the guy that was their more long-term solution to losing Najee Harris that we all kind of projected that he was. So I think he's a solid buy low if you can get him for less than a second. But I am I am panicked enough on him to where obviously he's nowhere near the value that he was just a few months ago. Um, and his situation and profile for the next couple of years has certainly decreased a lot too. Um, but I don't think that that means that he's just gonna like run himself out of the NFL and to where he could be a really good handcuff, or maybe he ends up going to a different team over the next couple of years if they trade him for like a sixth or seventh or something like that. Um, but I still think the upside's there in Pittsburgh that I'm willing to buy low for less than a second if it's a third or a couple thirds or whatever. Because I think he's a better than fair dart throw. Like he's not just a dart throw; he's better than a dart throw, but he's not a guy that you're starting obviously at any point. Um, and should be better than just like a random handcuff on your bench. So I would say I'm at a 6.5 is my final answer for the panic meter on a 1 to 10, with 10 being very panicked, or just all the way done. So I'm at a 6.5. I'm not fully scared or out yet, but it is definitely a lot worse than where he was at just a couple months ago. Neighbors and JCM for JSN in a mid first. Thoughts on the strategy overall? I also have Burrow. I'm thinking about trading away in a similar move. I would take JSN in the first here. Um, I would. I think JSN and Neighbors are in the same tier at this moment. I think some people would argue that, given Neighbors' injury, that JSN might be higher than him. But I think they're in the same tier. If Neighbors was healthy, I would still prefer Neighbors over JSN. But the injury for the remainder of the year is kind of a little weird with his dynasty value. And if you're contending, obviously you would prefer Jackson Smith and Jigba in the production that he's giving you now. I would easily take the first round pick over Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, though. So that difference to me is really what's making me pick the JSN in the first side, is that I don't see too much of a difference between JSN and Malik Neighbors, but I see a massive difference between JCM and a first round pick, especially if it's like a mid first. Um, whereas any possible shot of leaning earlier, like top 5 or top 6, oh my goodness. Um, that's what draws me over to that side. If this was JSN in a second, maybe you'd have a little bit more of a conversation. If you're competing, I would probably still take the JSN side. But JSN in a first, that just swings his trade so far over to the JSN side for me that it's not even really all that close to me. And if you can do something similar with Joe Burrow, again, if you're competing and you want to do something with that as well, Burrow and move over to a Drake May quarterback, a Bo Nix quarterback, a Jordan Love quarterback. If you can get Justin Herbert, that would be great too. But maybe it's Baker. Move over to one of those other quarterbacks for production now, but also still having fantastic dynasty long term value. I don't mind that deal either for Joe Burrow. It's something that I'm still trying to do that in my other dynasty league. This is the one dynasty league that I have Joe Burrow in, but it's a salary cap league, so there's salary implications that are involved in every single trade. So it's not as cut and dry as just regular dynasty values, because I got to balance out my cap space, their cap space. Does this trade make sense for my team because of the player's contract? It's too many different layers for that one, that I wish I could just trade Joe Burrow for like Jordan Love and a pick or something like that, but I can't, because the Jordan Love contract's going to expire at the end of the year, whereas I have Burrow through 2028. So it's like I value that long term way more than losing Jordan Love at the end of the year. So anyway, Aaron, Rachaad White or Chase Brown leading White based on matchup? I would take Rachaad White this week in your starting lineup. I think I also said the same thing for somebody else on the 4for4 channel, but it was with Rico. I think Rico and Rachaad White are both really good starts this week. Rachaad White is running back 21 for John Paulson. This is in a half PPR. So it might make even more sense in a full PPR. And Chase Brown's RB 23. But Chase Brown gets Detroit, which I don't love. Seattle's pretty difficult for running backs as well for Rachaad White, but at least he has some receiving ability to where he can actually do something with the receptions, whereas Chase Brown just seems like he gets like 4 receptions, but then he has like 12 yards because it's a dump off from Browning to where Browning doesn't want to get sacked, and then he gives the hit to Chase Brown instead. Whereas at least with Rachaad White, especially with maybe how some of their injuries are to their receivers, he could actually be utilized as a legitimate weapon out of the backfield, rushing and receiving. So give me Rashad White this week over Chase Brown. We've got a contending Superflex team with Burrow, Mahomes, Lawrence, CMC, Barkley. Wow. Just traded Etienne, Godwin, and Pittman for Kittle, a 26 second, 27 first, and third. Did I give up too much? No, I think I like this. So the first for ETN I think makes sense. And then we'll say a second and a third for Pittman and Kittle over Godwin as a way to kind of break this down. And I think I think that's totally fine. And I view this as a really good way. A, you just upgraded from Pitts to Kittle, so that's pretty good. You didn't hurt your starting lineup at all because ETN was your running back 4. Godwin and Pittman aren't where your I'm just assuming they were your 4s and 5s behind Chase Lamb and Puka. Um, so I think this is a good way to pivot off of some of your kind of age slash they're producing now, but will they be producing later players in Travis Etienne and Michael Pittman? Godwin is just kind of old and then, whatever, or older, I should say. So he's just kind of like he's a solid asset, I think for the remainder of the year. But then also 2026 and beyond, I think can still be good. But he's getting up there in age a little bit. That he's a fine buy, fine sell on both sides. So you're getting the future picks that you could then continue building out this dynasty with the second and the first. But you're also upgrading your tight end spot for your competing team now without hurting your starting lineup at all. So I like this a lot. I don't think you gave up too much, and I think it's actually a really good way to invest in the future while competing now. I feel like a lot of players play Dynasty and they view themselves as they either have to win or they have to compete. But I think not enough people consider how can I do both simultaneously. And I think this is a great example of how to do both simultaneously by taking advantage of some of your depth and age and production now and translating that into shots on better long-term options by drafting well in future drafts or hitting on the young guys before they explode. So I think this is great. Honestly, I don't think you gave up too much at all. I love it. Gavin asking Chase Brown or Khalil Shakir is my last flex spot. Oh boy. I don't know off the top of my head. Paulson has Chase Brown as the flex 40, and he's got Shakir. I bet he's got him below. Yep, flex 59. So Paulson would say to lean towards Chase Brown still. I'm assuming that's probably because of his overall volume. He's projecting Chase Brown to have 2 fantasy points more than Khalil Shakir. Which if Shakir scores, that's great. But if he's got 4 for 40 or 4 for 50 or something like that, Chase Brown could also have that many receptions, not anywhere near that many yards, but he got to have that many yards in totality. I think I'd lean Chase Brown for the volume. And I'm with Paulson on that one. So I'll go Chase Brown. Unless you really, really need upside. Like if you played against like Puka or Kendrick Bourne or Christian McCaffrey, and now you're projected to lose by like 20 points or something like that, then I think I would play Khalil Shakir because I think that his upside is higher than Chase Brown. But I think in most scenarios, I'd probably just play Chase Brown over Khalil Shakir for the volume that Chase Brown is going to have. Unless, like I said, you really need some upside based on your matchup, then I would go Khalil Shakir and hope that he gets 5 for 60 and a touchdown or something like that. That I don't think Chase Brown can get. Start 2 between Nix, Tua, Rattler, or Stroud. I would start Bo Nix. And I would start. Mike Wright had CJ Stroud as a start of the week this week for quarterbacks. I don't want to start Rattler. I've thrown him out. So I'm not even considering that. Paulson has Bo Nix at QB 14. He's got Tua at QB 20 and CJ Stroud. Oh, he's got Stroud at 18. And then Rattler's in the 20s. So it really is a start 2 between Nix, Tua, and Stroud. Paulson would say Knicks and Stroud. Stroud's matchup, the Baltimore Ravens defense has been pretty bad for fantasy football. Um, so I like that one. Yeah, I think, and Stroud's running a little bit too this year. That I believe that Tua is not. So maybe you get a little bit of an extra boost from Stroud for his rushing ability. Obviously, Bo Nix is going to run, and maybe if he can score points on Philly, a la like Baker last week, then that could be good for Bo Nix, obviously. So I would play Bo Nix and CJ Stroud. I'm with Paulson on that one. Christian, what's going on, my man? Welcome in, welcome in. Took me this long just to finally get down to this comment from 40 minutes ago. All right, let's see if we can rapid fire some of these. Likely contending roster, Superflex half PPR, have Kyler Fields, Dak, and Darnold. Guy really needs quarterback. Would you trade Dak for Marvin Harrison? Would you still like my quarterback room, and having a stack would be nice? Mm, um, no, I don't want to do that. I would rather give him Fields, Kyler, or Darnold. I view Dak as your QB1, so I would rather keep Dak than move him for Marvin Harrison Jr. and try to see if you can get another wide receiver for, or can you still get Marv, but then you'd have to add to Fields or add to Darnold to do that. I'd rather keep Dak over Marv. Because I would not like your quarterback room after you made this deal. I don't know what your wide receiver room looks like, but I do not want my quarterback room to be Kyler, Fields, and Darnold. I'd rather have Dak in there. He's the best performing one as of right now too, so I would keep Dak. Dustin, what's up, my man? Can you help me with my last two flex spots? Woody, Pittman, Dobbins, Carter, DeMarcado. If Pittman can't go with his hammy, who you starting? So I would play Woody. And then, yeah, I don't know if Pittman's playing. Have we seen anything in what they're doing? I'm just looking at all the Panthers have officially rolled out Chuba Hubbard. Buccaneers have officially rolled out Bucky. I don't see anything about. Oh, Michael Pittman Jr. is out here. He's practicing. Okay. Now, do we play Pittman off of that? What does Paulson say after? So I'm looking at flex rankings. Woody is flex 32. Pittman is flex 42. Dobbins is flex 36. And Carter and DeMarcado are basically the same. Carter's 72. Where's DeMarcado? 46. Paulson likes DeMarcado. They do have a good matchup against Tennessee, but I think the unknown of which one is which makes me shy away from them, especially when you only need to start two and you have other two good options. So I would play Woody. Woody is Paulson's highest ranked in here too, I think. And then he would say Woody and Dobbins. And I think that's where I lean. Because I don't know if I like Pittman off the hamstring injury. And, they also, like, Vegas can be kind of weird if they have, like, a good defense or not. Like, they held everybody, but Roma Dunze caught a touchdown, but they held all the other Bears down a little bit last week. And Indy can do so much. Like, Jonathan Taylor could rush for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns like Genti did. And they may not use Michael Pittman as much with a hamstring injury too. So I would play Woody and J.K. Dobbins. I would avoid the Arizona situation until we get clarity on what's going on with both of them by actually watching the game. And then I would just avoid Michael Pittman with the hamstring injury. Woody and Dobbins. How much does Kyle Williams need to do this year to remain hopeful? Are you trying to buy? I would like to buy. It's so strange to me because I feel like with how the Patriots receiving room is, like, we saw one good game out of Kayshon Boutte and then nothing since. We've seen pretty much one good game out of Stephon Diggs, which was last week, but we haven't really seen anything else other than that. Demario Douglas hasn't really done all that much. It's like Drake May is succeeding by not having any good wide receivers. And what gives me hope still is that we have only seen 4 games of Kyle Williams, and I don't want to count out any rookie through just 4 weeks of the year. Obviously, with him being, a little bit lower of a prospect, a 3rd round pick, I can understand why people be like, oh, well, he might not be anything because it might be Jalen Polk 2.0. But again, it's still only been 4 games into his career now. We know that rookie wide receivers usually tend to do much better over the second half of the year, especially after bye weeks. Which when is the Patriots bye week? Is in week 14. So we have a long way to go before their own bye week to where we'll only see about 4 games post bye if they do anything with Kyle Williams after the fact. Um, but I do wish that they would start implementing him a little bit more and throwing him out there more, and which we might see over the next month. Maybe by the end of October, we're singing a little bit of a different tune. I would like to go buy. I'm not paying a second for him right now because I don't think you have to. But I would like to still go buy because I still very much believe in Kyle Williams, and I don't want to get off the train after him not doing anything through the first 4 games of his career. Um, when the opportunity is still so plainly there for him to be the best wide receiver in this Patriots offense. It might just be a Mike Vrabel thing as well. Obviously, he's not giving Travion Henderson the run that we think that he should, especially when Ramondre and Antonio Gibson are fumbling away carries, and Henderson just does seem to be like the best running back in the backfield, but he's not. Vrabel's not giving him opportunity like that. So it might just be a big kind of perfect storm of like, yeah, maybe at this moment, Diggs, Douglas, and Kayshon Boutte are a little bit better. And Kyle Williams is still getting integrated into the offense as a rookie. But it also might be Mike Vrabel's veteran love and hatred of rookies that's also holding him down a little bit too. Motorcycle drove past my house. Sorry, it's like really loud for me, so it was distracting. I lost my train of thought. So don't want to give up on him yet. We'll see what happens over the next month or two. I would still like to buy less than a second because I don't think you need to pay a second right now because I still really do strongly believe in Kyle Williams. Now, what would he need to do for me not to be hopeful for the remainder of the year to kind of flip this question to the other side is basically not play, is basically just continue this for the remainder of the year to where he's not seeing snaps and he's not seeing routes, all that kind of stuff. And then I would start to question it heading into year 2. I'd probably still would like to buy in heading into year 2. It would depend on what they would do in the draft and free agency. But for me to be like very scared about Kyle Williams for long term would be if this was how he was for the next 12 weeks. Which my hope is that he's not. Because again, rookie, 4 years. Mike Vrabel hates rookies. Or 4 games. Mike Vrabel hates rookies. It's just, I'm not giving up yet. Got to give him a little bit of time here. Nathan, who would you rather have as a rebuilder? Hunter, White, Tucker, Addison, or 2 firsts and Trey Tucker? As a rebuilder, I would rather have the oh man. I would say I would like to have the 2 first, but I don't love that they're 27 and 28 because that's really pushing your rebuild down a lot. To where like Jordan Addison can still be a very good player for the next couple of years. Travis Hunter obviously has all the upside in the world, and similar to him is just a rookie who's only played 4 games. Maybe he gets integrated even more. Maybe they fire Shane Waldron. Maybe Liam Cohen works his magic on the receiver room, and Trevor Lawrence, as he kind of has been working his magic on ETN. Does that? Then I think you can flip Rachaad White maybe for a second. I'd rather have Rachaad White and Sean Tucker than Trey Tucker. Like Trey Tucker would be. I'd rather have Trey Tucker than Sean Tucker, but I'd rather have White and Tucker over Trey Tucker. I think I would rather have the players over the draft picks because they're just so far out that I think that you could just do better. I think if Travis Hunter were to show out anything else more, maybe you flip him for a better first round pick or more than a first. I think a first for Addison, you could get that at any point in time. But, if he does well this year, like he has the last 2 years, I think maybe you can get a first. Like I said, you can get a first at any point, I think, for Jordan Addison. Like, that's a wash. You might then be able to get something for Rachaad White now because Bucky Irving is out. Like if you could trade Rashad White and a third for a second, that's a better deal. And then you keep Travis Hunter over a first and Addison over a first. That's a better deal than just having Trey Tucker. So I'd rather have the players in this one, I think. So I think you can just do more. The ceiling, I think, is higher with the players than it is with the picks. And I'd rather have that for my rebuild. Also, our Dynasty League does a random draw of everyone who didn't make the playoffs or get last for rookie order. So the 27 picks should be at least top 5. Did I miss where? Oh yeah, if it's this is the that you traded away ETN and Godwin and Pittman for Kittle in the first. Yeah, if it's a top 5 first in 27, that's even better. I like that a lot. Would you trade Bowers and CD for Wilson, Hall, and Warren? In redraft, I'm okay with it. In Dynasty, I would not. Redraft, I'm fine with it though. Just to move off, go from CD to Wilson, that's cool, and then you get Hall, and it's a lot of Jets. But I'm okay with it to shake things up, get you some wins now in redraft. Don't do it in Dynasty though. Tearing up from Shakir to Golden, a good idea long term. With what? What's the plus? Shakir in a third. I don't even know if Golden is that much of a tier up from Shakir, honestly. Shakir in a third to move over to Golden, fine. Shakir in a second, I would rather have Shakir in a second. That's kind of like where I'm at. Is what's the plus being added to Shakir to move up to Golden? If it's a third or something like that, then sure. I'm still not a Golden fan. I wasn't over draft season, and I haven't seen anything with the Packers. Again, it's through 4 games. Gotta give rookies more time, but I haven't seen anything to make me change off my stance to be like, dude, I was totally wrong about Matthew Golden. Because so far, I've kind of been totally right about Matthew Golden to where he was a player in college who could not separate himself from other wide receivers in college to where he the only production he had in Texas was when Isaiah Bond was hurt. And now he's gone to a team in the NFL that over the past like 2 to 3 years has been known to run a wide receiver by committee where all the wide receivers are very similarly talented to one another. So he wasn't able to separate himself in college against other similarly talented wide receivers to himself. How is he going to be able to do that in the NFL with other similarly talented NFL players like Jaden Reed and Romeo Dobbs and Dontavian Wicks and and then Tucker Kraft, and they want to run with Josh Jacobs. It's just and through 4 weeks so far, that's kind of been the case, is that Matthew Golden has not been able to substantially separate himself from the other wide receivers that are similarly talented to him because he himself is not a true difference-making talent that demands targets at the wide receiver position. And the Green Bay Packers offensively as a situation is not an offense conducive to really want to have a wide receiver 1 at this moment. Or maybe they do want to have a wide receiver 1, but they don't have that wide receiver 1 on their team because they don't have a player talented enough to be that wide receiver 1. And I don't think Golden is that right now. So through 4 weeks, low-key, I've kind of been right about Matthew Golden. And I wonder if that continues moving forward. Obviously, he has a bunch of upside and can be the wide receiver 1 for Green Bay moving forward. And it's only been 4 weeks, and we got to give these guys more time because they're just rookies. But if Golden does not break out and he is just another cog in the wheel, is that really all that much different than what Khalil Shakir is right now with Josh Allen, with Keon Coleman, with Josh Palmer, with Dalton Kincaid? Like, they're kind of similar wide receivers. So obviously, if you want to move over to Matthew Golden for the upside, that's totally fine. But I wouldn't spend a second to do that. I would, spend a third or something like that. That's why I view them closer to where I'm asking yourself, is that really a tier up? Is it a good idea? I'm not sure. It might be, but it depends on the cost. Boogaloo Magoo. We had a question earlier where somebody said that they asked if they should trade Chuba for, I'll call it an early second round pick. He called it the 2.01. So an early second, I'm totally fine with of moving Chuba for right now. I would not move him for a mid to late second. I think that there's still meat on the bone for Chuba. But if you can get an early second at this moment, maybe you got to wait a week for him to get back to being healthy. Not so much healthy, active, I should say, and not out, not inactive. But I think an early second is where I would like to get to move off of Chuba right now. These are my only three options. I guess I'll drop Ollie Gordon. DeMarcado would be my backup option, I think, because I think I'm Team Carter for the week. If you wanted to make a bet on one of them, but if you essentially, I would probably hold on to both Cardinals to then see which one it is. If one is actually the guy over the other, and then you could drop Ollie Gordon. That's why I went to dropping Ollie first. But if you wanted to make the bet that you know which Cardinal running back it is going to be, you could drop that Cardinal running back in case anything were to happen to Achane this week. But personally, I would say Achane's going to survive Sunday. Let me see which Cardinal running back I'd rather have long term, and then maybe you drop that one, drop whoever is the worst of the two Cardinals running backs after this Sunday, and then pick up Ollie Gordon again to stash. Derrick Henry's a hold / buy. I'm not worried at all about Derrick Henry or this offense at the current moment, with or without Lamar. I would be holding and buying Derrick Henry for contenders, especially if you get Henry for less than a first. I probably wouldn't pay a first for Derrick Henry at this moment because there is a little bit of like, but I don't think you have to pay a first for Derrick Henry right now. And I would go buy him if you can. Rachaad White or Kenneth Walker can only start one. Paulson would say to start. My gut went to Walker. He would say Walker as well. Walker's RB17. Rachaad White is RB21. Tampa Bay is an easier rush defense than Seattle. And Walker gets receiving and rushing. Charbonnet is probably going to get a touchdown maybe. He might steal one from Walker, but we're projecting that Rachaad White is going to be back into that workhorse role, but maybe Sean Tucker does get something. Whereas we know what Kenneth Walker is when Charbonnet is still healthy, at least over the past couple of weeks, and even in the last year too. So I would play Kenneth Walker in a slightly better defensive matchup with a more known role. Josh, hey Addison, I'm not a contender, so I traded Ibuka for Rashee Rice and Benson day before his injury. Was that enough for Ibuka? Just really like Rashee's upside long term. I would say that was enough for Ibuka. It just sucks that Trey Benson then went on IR to where it's probably not enough at this current moment, just given that Trey Benson is going to be out for up to 6 weeks. But had Trey Benson stayed healthy, I think I would have said that this is going to be that this would have been enough for Ibuka, especially if Rashee Rice comes back and is Rashee Rice. And like you said, you believe in him and his upside long term. So, if Rashee Rice produces as he did before the injury, he is probably going to be ranked at or even above Emeka Ibuka in Dynasty, to where then you're essentially saying, I got a free Trey Benson for when he comes back from injury, and then the possibilities of what happens in 2026 and beyond. So yeah, I like it. Connor's asking if he's holding a probable early 26 and 27 firsts. While I'm contending, would you sell either of those picks for anyone if someone who you target could use an upgrade at wide receiver or running back? I would generally, my thought process around this is I would try so hard to win your championships without spending these first round picks. So then you go into your drafts and you have these first, and then if you draft well, you added a really, really good rookie to your teams 2 years in a row. That's my thought process behind this, is how can I win without spending these potentially early first round picks that are going to be really good prospects. So if you need upgrades at running backs or wide receivers, can you do that with other first round picks? Can you do that with second round picks? That's the way that I would prioritize it, because I would just rather, I don't want to, not to say that you're going to sacrifice your long-term value of your team by giving up these firsts for a championship now and upgrading players, because the thought would be that you would upgrade to a pretty good player who is good for Dynasty and for win now. But I would like to do that I would like to win and keep these picks if I can. Um, Now, I mean, if you are using them, and especially if you're gonna package them, like if you want to upgrade your wide receiver, running back, I would not, I would never trade those firsts away for one individual player. I would never. I'm basically at the point right now where I would never one for one a first for another player, um, unless it was like, hey, I traded away this early first for like CD Lamb, then sure, um, but that's never gonna happen. So any trades that at the current moment are fair in a one for one deal for a first round pick for a player, I would almost always take the first round pick. Like 99.9% of the time, I'm taking the first round pick because the upside is just so much higher. That's why I'm scared to, at this current moment, be like, yeah, Quentin Johnston. Like I would pay a first for Quentin Johnston. Um, I would. That's why I'm scared to re-anoint Travis Etienne back to first round pick level. Stuff like that. Uh, So I would never trade away those early first four players individually. I would need to have packaged another wide receiver. I don't really even want to do it for the running back position either. Um, it would probably be at the wide receiver position. Is take whatever wide receivers that you have right now, your 2 or 3, add that first to it, and that needs to vault you into like top 5, 6, 7 area. That needs to vault you up into Amon Ra or Lamb or Nico at the floor. Maybe you get up into JSN, depending on the wide receiver that you add with that first. I think would then get you into whatever range of wide receiver that you are looking to buy. But I would never trade that first individually for a singular player, and I would more likely just like to keep those picks and then upgrade using other picks. Is how I would go about it. Woody Marks or Jordan Mason this week? I would go Woody Marks just because of the Jordan Mason, the matchup against Cleveland. Paulson has Woody Marks one spot ahead of Jordan Mason in rankings, so I agree. Marks has the pass catching ability. He has literally the best adjusted fantasy points matchup against Baltimore. They are 32nd, whereas Jordan Mason may not have the receiving workload, especially compared to Woody Marks, and is playing literally the hardest, the first ranked defense in adjusted fantasy points against running back. So they're quite literally on the complete opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of defensive matchups. And Woody Marks has the receiving ability. Mason necessarily does not. So I would take Woody Marks. Will a weak RB2, unless the rest of the team is solid, you probably need to hold on. Was this in relation to a different question? I don't think it was. Will a weak RB2, unless the rest of the team is solid, you probably need to RB2, honestly, in Dynasty, I think in your starting lineup should be your weakest starting position. That's just me personally. Your between your tight end and your RB2, I think those should be your weakest starting positions in your starting lineup. So no, I don't think a weak RB2 will cause you to need to reload or rebuild. It's one of the easiest positions to spot start. We've seen how many backup running backs now come in and they can give you really good weeks for a week, 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row, multiple times throughout the year, depending on injuries. That it's one of the easiest positions to just fill in on a weekly basis. And more often than not, I don't know if you heard my son down. He just woke up from a nap and he does not do well waking up from naps. So I don't know if you can hear him downstairs. But RB2, I think being your weakest spot does not mean that you need to enter a reload or rebuild. In fact, it's the position that I want to be the weakest because it's the easiest to fill in. And more often than not, one player, one slot in your starting lineup does not a win or loss make. To where the majority of the time your fantasy matchups are won by double-digit points or lost by double-digit points, to where one true start sit decision did not really impact the final outcome of your game. I mean, it happens. I've had I've had a couple in multiple leagues over the past 2 weeks where I'm just like, hey, if I just played that one player instead of this player, I would have won. But more often than not, like when I'm looking at my matchups, it's like, oh, I won this league by 40. Oh, I lost this league by 20. Nothing would have helped. So that's why I want my running back 2 spot to be the weakest, because it usually doesn't matter with one specific position, like not consistently putting up 15 plus points or something like that. But it's also the easiest to fill in because you get so many backup running backs that that's why I want to stash as many backups as I can to give myself the maximum amount of probability of being benefited by a running back going down. That's why, like, I have a league where I have um, Rashad White, Rico Dowdle. I picked up Amari DiMercado, and I had JCM, and um, I'd have Tyjae Spears on the bench still. Who else did I have? I had Jordan Mason from last year from Christian McCaffrey, and then I also I have one other player that I've considered as a spot start. Oh, it was Dobbins after last year. So I have this whole grouping of running backs that, like, I don't know who to start, especially now that Dowdle's playing and Rashad White is going to be a starter. And I picked up Amari DiMercado because I was like, he's going to be a good start, maybe. Like, it's sometimes so easy to just find these guys throughout the year. Not to say that it's easy to find to like predict who it's going to be, but it's so easy to find these guys throughout the year because it usually happens to most everybody for running backs. So that the more you have, the more likely you are to benefit from any injury that comes along. So no, just because your RB2 is weak does not mean that you should go into a rebuild or reload. Cash Money with the $2 super chat. He's made a cash money, so he sends some cash money my way. Appreciate you, my man. Thank you so much. Are we flexing Jordan Mason or Khalil Shakir? I'm also starting the Browns defense. Ooh. I would probably play Khalil Shakir then. I think this might be the same answer that I gave a little bit earlier. I don't remember which one it was, but it was if you just need points, go with Jordan Mason. Because I think the volume, it was the Chase Brown versus Khalil Shakir. So where I said, I think more often than not, I would probably just play Jordan Mason, even if you're playing the Browns defense. That doesn't mean that Mason and the Browns defense are necessarily going to counteract each other. Like if the Browns just sack Carson Wentz like 4 or 5 times and pick up a fumble, but then Jordan Mason has, 12 fantasy points or something, like that's not going to impact both positions necessarily. Maybe your ceiling's lower, but it's not to be like, oh, I can't score well with both these guys in here. Jordan Mason is flex 33 for John Paulson. Shakir is flex 59. So Paulson would say just to play Jordan Mason for the volume, the amount of volume that he's going to get, because he's probably going to see 17, 18, 19 opportunities, touches, especially if they do handle Cleveland. I know Cleveland's defense is really good, but if somehow Minnesota is winning for the majority of this game and then they want to run out the clock, Jordan Mason might be even more necessarily in that to get volume. So more often than not, I would play Jordan Mason. Now, as I mentioned with the Chase Brown thing, if you have found yourself in a hole to where you're looking at your matchup, you're projected to lose by 20, 25 points or whatever, maybe even 15 points. And you're looking at the rest of your lineup and maybe you don't have a lot of upside. Khalil Shakir, I think, represents more upside than Jordan Mason to where, he could have 7 for 80 and a touchdown or something like that, that I don't think Mason necessarily has, just like I don't think that Chase Brown necessarily has. So more often than not, I would start Jordan Mason. But if you are in a matchup where you're projected to lose by 15, 20, 25 plus points, then I would probably play Khalil Shakir and swing for the fences. Because as I kind of just mentioned, one start decision is probably not going to determine that particular matchup. So if Khalil Shakir scores 5 points and Jordan Mason scores 12, you're probably you might lose by more than 8, to where that 8-point swing in your lineup is not going to necessarily be the reason why you lost. But if Khalil Shakir scores 20 and Jordan Mason scores 9, that 11-point swing in a could be enough to where if one of your other players does well, that might get you closer to where maybe you do win a really close matchup if you're projected to lose by that much. So long-winded way of saying Mason more often than not, Shakir for the true upside. We have a lot of questions in here. But thank you so much for the super chat. Lots and lots of questions. Where did I leave off? Almost there. Almost there. What would you price Woody Marks at? Is he a flash in the pan type of player or someone you see giving you more consistent production? Yeah, so I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. Is that I think Woody Marks is going to be good for the remainder of the year, and then we're going to have to start questioning whether or not that's going to continue moving on in 2026 and beyond. I do think that he's going to be one of the players that I will be less likely to trust keeps the role that he will probably have for the remainder of the year moving forward. Meaning that maybe Joe Mixon comes back, meaning maybe they draft somebody else more to replace Nick Chubb, but then that running back is potentially good enough to just beat out Woody Marks as well. And depending on the draft capital they give him, could be better draft capital than a day 3 pick for Woody Marks. And then that'll all impact his value, of course. So that's where I think the answer to this is yes. I do think that he is kind of a flash in the pan type of player long term from like a dynasty perspective. But I do think that he's someone that is going to get consistent production for the remainder of the year. To where I think he's if you drafted him in the 3rd or 4th round of rookie drafts, I would probably ride it out for the remainder of the year, assuming that you're competing and you want his points. But if you drafted him just to see what happens and you're rebuilding, I would probably sell him for I would probably value it as more of like an early second right now, kind of like around where Chuba is at this current moment. If you can get a first for Woody Marks, that's phenomenal. Or if you can add something to him to move up to a first, Woody in the 3rd, Woody and some other kind of win now piece, Woody and like Keenan Allen for a first, that might be a deal that gets done if you're rebuilding and the other person's competing. But I'd probably value him more as like an early second is like I think a good price point to sell him off. Because I think that's probably where I would like to sell him off in the off season. I would like to get a first for him in the off season, but it's probably going to be like around an early second still in the off season after producing well throughout the remainder of the year. So that's kind of where I view Woody Marks. Like I trust Cam Scadaboo a lot more as a day 3 pick to hold on to his job than I do Woody Marks. And I would rather have Scadaboo than Marks, and I would rather pay into Scadaboo right now than Marks. But if you have Woody Marks and you're competing, I think he's going to be solid for the remainder of the season as the RB1 for Houston. Then we'll just revisit it in the offseason. Waddle and Rasheed for CeeDee Lamb. Ooh, normally I would be all right with doing this 2 for 1, but I think that given Waddle being the wide receiver 1 now and potentially for the future, given Tyreek Hill's injury and then Rasheed's upside, I lean towards keeping Waddle and Rasheed Rice. I'm totally fine if you want CeeDee Lamb. I'm totally fine taking CeeDee Lamb. I would never say no to CeeDee Lamb. But I do think that if you wanted to chase upside and ceiling a little bit, keeping Waddle and Rasheed Rice might be the play. Yeah. I think that's where I'll leave it. If you want CeeDee Lamb, I'm here for it. If you want to chase the upside of Waddle and Rasheed, I'm here for that as well. Sorry, not a great answer or definitive answer, but I'm on both sides. Tingley, hey Addison, happy Friday. Happy Friday to you, my man. Would you start Juwan or Mark Andrews this week? Godwin or pick up Tolbert? I would, for the tight end position, I would probably play. Who does they? I'm trying to think of what my answer is before I look at Paulson. Paulson has Juwan as a tight end 8, and he's got Andrews as tight end 14. Makes sense. Juwan has, I think, more trusted volume and does not have a current backup quarterback. Well, he probably has a backup quarterback throwing to him at this moment, but is not that is not a new quarterback for this week with Cooper Rush. So I'm cool with Juwan Johnson. Paulson would say Juwan Johnson. I'm cool with that. That's probably where my head was leaning to. Godwin or pick up Tolbert. I'm cool playing Chris Godwin this week. Over just having would you have to drop Godwin or would you drop who else would you drop for Tolbert? I think would be the question. Like Tolbert is wide receiver 51 for Paulson, whereas Godwin is wide receiver 31. He had a lot of really good usage last week. It just seemed to be like he didn't have like the game speed kind of back, which makes sense. This is his first week back, so maybe he's a little bit better this week. And Godwin, I think, is just a much better talent than Jalen Tolbert too. So I would trust in Chris Godwin, I think, especially if you're going to have to pick up Jalen Tolbert, depending on who you would have to drop to make that happen. I'd rather just play Chris Godwin. Marvin has a redraft trade. Hubbard and this London. I don't even need to read anything else. Drake London. Next week, I'll need to bring Gabriel up for my taxi. Drop LaQuint Allen, Jake Tongas, or Sean Tucker. It's probably LaQuint Allen. If you wanted to drop Tongas, assuming that Kittle is activated at the end of, or heading into next week, I can understand dropping Tongas, but I think I would probably. It's between Allen and Tongas. I'm cool with keeping either one of them. It would just depend on if Kittle is activated after this week or not. Because I think this is the last week, right? 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, this is the last week. So, the good thing, at least with Tongas, is that if Kittle were to get hurt again, that his production is there as kind of like a good handcuffed tight end, whereas LaQuint Allen would need 1 to 2 injuries ahead of him to be really impactful. Like if Bashal Tutin got hurt, I don't think that would really help LaQuint Allen all that much. If ETN got hurt, that would probably help Allen because of the receiving upside, but I still don't think he would be in a position to where you're actually considering starting him every week. So technically, Allen would need 2 injuries in a way, whereas Tongas would only need 1 to a player that has already been hurt. So if he were to re-injure it or anything like that. And Tongas has now somewhat known production in that role, whereas LaQuint Allen, we don't know. I'm only guessing and predicting because of how good he was in college that he would be good in that RB1 role for Jacksonville. So it could be LaQuint Allen, or if you wanted to drop Tongas because Kittle's back, I'm cool with that too. I'll keep Tucker though. As a contender who lost Burrow and has Chase, would you consider a trade of Chase for JSN and Dart as the main pieces? Yes, I would. I think moving off of Chase right now, especially as a contender, is a very strong consideration, especially if it makes sense whenever you move off of Chase over to another kind of elite dynasty wide receiver, and then you're getting a good plus on top. So yeah, I would do this if you can make that happen. What tight end to start this week or rest of season? Ertz and Njoku, Mason Taylor, Theo Johnson. I would start Zach Ertz this week. He is, yeah, he's the highest ranked one for Paulson. I would start Zach Ertz this week, and then I would probably just keep starting Zach Ertz until something changes. Either he gets hurt or Mason Taylor. Mason Taylor would be the backup for me on this one. But I would start Ertz. And then we're starting Pollard, White, Wandale, Shakir, Amari, or Rico start 2. I will start. I don't know if that's Wandale or Waddle. I would start. I'm assuming Waddle. It's one letter off on both of them. It's either the N should be a D or you missed an A in between the D and the L. So I don't know if it's Wandale or Waddle. I don't know if that necessarily makes a difference, though. I would play Rico and Rachaad White. Now, if that is Waddle and you need some upside, I'm cool with that too, and playing Waddle over Rico. But I would probably go with a volume of White and Rico. let's see what's White is flex 34, Waddle's flex 35, and Rico is probably just behind it. He's flex 47. So Paulson, if that's Waddle, Paulson would say to play Waddle and White. If it's Wandale, I need the apostrophe. If it's Wandale, Paulson would say Rico and White. Tolbert or Trey Tucker. PPR Turpin hasn't been practicing, so IDK. I would play Tolbert over Trey Tucker. I'm cool with that. And then with Bucky out, how do you feel about Sean Tucker? I think you'd have better options than Sean Tucker. I think Rashad White is going to be, the main starter. I think Tucker's playable, but I think you probably have better options potentially. Pittman or Rico? I'll take Rico. Where do you rank Rashee Rice rest of season? I just traded for him. I don't do rankings, but I would probably rank him as the wide receiver 18-ish in there with upside to be a top 12 wide receiver for the remainder of the year. Bryce Young is cooked, right? Should I try to sell him for whatever I can at this point? Yes, I think Bryce Young is cooked. We just had there was a trade in the DLF YouTube Discord where somebody traded Bryce Young in a second for a 26 first and Shador. And he said that is probably the 102 to 103. So he traded Bryce Young in a second for a top 3 pick in Shador Sanders. And I think that is an absolute smash. So yes, if you can get a first still for Bryce Young, I would do that. Absolutely. I would play Rashad White of these 3. Sorry, Rob. I just read with any suggestions for moves. I'm vetoing down this trade, Rob. I said this at the beginning. You probably weren't there. It's all right. But I think I'm gonna veto down any moves to make questions in favor of faster questions that are more conducive for this kind of stream format. And if you were to join the DLF YouTube Discord or just drop that into the comments section, then I can get to it after the fact. But moves to make and all that kind of stuff, I think are just a little bit harder to do live. So I'm going to veto those down moving forward. The link for the DLF YouTube Discord is down in the description. So if you join that and then ask the same question, we can dive into it a lot more in there and leave the stream open for the faster questions. I think there's Kenneth Walker. I probably didn't get to your question before 12:53, and I apologize. That's just how many I talk so much. I try to give everybody the right amount of time, but then I end up being behind so fast. Dynasty League have Lamar, Dart just got offered Dart for Dak. Should I accept? I'm assuming that this is a 1 quarterback league. If it's a 1 quarterback league, I would probably just keep Jackson Dart. I hate same position 1-for-1 trades with an absolute passion because I just don't think that they make any sense. If this is a 1 quarterback league, I will keep Jackson Dart. I think he's going to be really good. I think I would rank Dak ahead of Dart, but I just don't really see the point in doing this deal. If it was a super flex league, I would probably take Dak, but because it's just 1 quarterback league, and more often than not, you're just going to be playing Lamar when he's healthy, I would just keep Jackson Dart. Marvin, I would start CJ Stroud, and I'm cool dropping Geno for the other. And then I have Strange dropping Joku, no tight end premium, but it's a dry league. I mean, yeah, if you want to. I think I like having the ability to pick and choose between Strange and Njoku because I don't think Strange is in every week start territory right now. Not Njoku isn't either, but I like having the choice between the two. So I wouldn't necessarily say you'd have to drop David Njoku in favor of Brenton Strange. Jordan Mason. That one's fairly easy to me. Where does Paulson have Henderson? He's got Mason at 20, and he's got Travion at 31. So Paulson has it. He's got Mason projected for 5 fantasy points more than Travion Henderson in half PPR leagues. So yes, Jordan Mason. Well, I guess I could change it to a full PPR. Full PPR, he's got Jordan Mason still at 20, and he's got Travion Henderson. Oh, he moved him up to RB 30. So yes, it's but this time at least it is a 4-point difference between the two, with Jordan Mason winning. Start one in full PPR for Mike, Sharp, Tucker, Malik Washington, or Travis Hunter. Wow, this is a group. Man, if you had told me that we were going to have Travis Hunter start sit questions with this group in week 5, I would start Charbonnet. I think it's the known production, not so much known production, known usage role. We're projecting that Sean Tucker can hopefully be what Charbonnet kind of is now. We're hoping that Malik Washington can get enough snaps to be relevant. And we're hoping that Travis Hunter could just be used. So I would go with Zach Charbonnet of this group. Is Ertz a better play with Terry out and Daniels back, or would you go Kelsey over him? I would play Zach Ertz with Jaden Daniels back. If Daniels isn't back, which I think he's supposed to be, I'm cool playing Kelsey over him. But yes, if with McLaurin probably out and then Daniels back, I would play Zach Ertz over Travis Kelsey. Paulson has them back-to-back projected for the exact same amount of fantasy points. So if you wanted that kind of tiebreaker of, hey, Daniels is back, Terry McLaurin's still out, Debo's kind of banged up too. So I think Zach Ertz is fine. 10-team contenders, Superflex, trade for BTJ. Where would you value? Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me read the whole entire thing before I skip ahead. Addison. H.N. Hampton Judkins. Are we going Downs in a 26 pick or Pickens in a 26 pick? Where do you value BTJ or Dobbins in a 26 pick? Sorry. I'm cool with either one of them. It just kind of depends on what the picks are. So Dobbins, I think it would have to be Dobbins in a first for BTJ, and I would take BTJ. And then for the Pickens side, it would probably be Pickens in a second. And I take BTJ for the long term there. Of the two, I would prefer to trade away Dobbins in the first, then Pickens in the second. If those are my two options. So I would that's probably about the gap for me. If it's Dobbins in a first and a third or something or whatever, then that's fine. But I think the main core of it would be Dobbins in a first for BTJ, and I would take BTJ there. Yep. Would you send Josh Downs, Chris Olave, and yeah, this is BTJ for sure. Maybe this is where I saw the Josh Downs name, but you also had Downs right next to Dobbins too. Anyway, yes, I would take Brian Thomas Jr. here. How much would you add to get the deal done? I would probably add another second to get the deal done. But this is BTJ pretty easily for me. Contender have London, Olave. Don't know that anyone will take AJ Brown. Which wide receivers would you trade based on their current trade value? All of them are tradable except for Drake London. Every single one of them. I don't know if that actually helps you or not, but every single one of those wide receivers, I am more than okay trading away at their current value, except for Drake London. Oh, we're almost at the end. I'm so excited. Not that I I love doing the stream every single week. It is one of my go-to highlights for the week. But when you start talking for 2 hours, boy. Discussing starts. Hendo, Harvey, Hunter, Carter, DeMarcado, or Miller. I just read your next comment. Yes, we are the biggest rivals. Ohio State, Penn State, Bengals, Steelers. Yeah, it's fun. But it's also like Caleb is the same way too. Like Caleb is a Bengals Ohio State fan as well. So it's pretty fun. I mean, it's not fun to be a Penn State fan right now. I hate it so much. And if we somehow beat Ohio State, I will be so happy. That one win against Ohio State will fuel me for the next 10 years. just kind of like how the blocked field goal win against Ohio State has fueled me now for 10 years. But I'm at the edge of my rope. I'm at the edge. But yeah, it is funny that we are pretty big rivals. I like it a lot. Anyway, am I only picking one here? Is that the question tracks? Do I just need to pick one? Because I think the way that I would rank this would be Carter. I would play Carter, I think, of this whole entire group. And then if you also want to play I don't know if I would want to play DeMarcado, but I think if I'm just picking one of this whole entire group, it's Michael Carter. Paulson would say DeMarcado. He's on team DeMarcado. But I know for a fact he's got both of them over Travion Henderson, and he's got Henderson ahead of Harvey, so he made that easy. And he's got Harvey ahead of Kendry Miller. And Travis Hunter is just kind of in that big. Travis Hunter is behind. I see Michael Carter's name right there. So Paulson would say to start DeMarcado. He's team DeMarcado. I think I find myself more on team Michael Carter. So I think your decision is basically between the two Cardinals guys. And then Hunter is probably your next best option. Or Travion Henderson. But I would pick between one of the two Cardinals guys. Paulson's DeMarcado. I'm Carter. With no real evidence behind Carter other than he was the first person in drills, and then it sounds like he was, by his quote, it sounds like he's saying that he's starting. And he was the starter last year whenever James Conner didn't play week 17, week 18, but DeMarcado wasn't active for those games, so we don't know. DeMarcado was the starter 2 years ago for James Conner when he got hurt, but Michael Carter wasn't on the team, so we don't know. So we have like 2-week sample sizes for both of these guys as the starters for Arizona without James Conner, without the other one also there. So we have no idea how they're going to use either one of them. And they both produce basically the exact same. In DeMarcado's favor, at least he's the one who has been playing. Carter was on the practice squad. DeMarcado was the one who was there with Trey Benson. So maybe that's what leans you more towards DeMarcado. DeMarcado is also bigger. He is 215 pounds to where Carter's 201. So it's not like DeMarcado is some small scat back. He's actually a pretty good rusher and is a bigger player that you would think would be more conducive to in between the tackle runs. So those were all. I was team DeMarcado before, but I think as the week's gone on, may or may not have been right. But I've shifted a little bit over to team Carter. But Paulson has stood firm on DeMarcado this whole time. Malik Washington, Gazin, or Michael. I would go Michael Carter for this as well. And then I would start T. Higgins, but I don't love it. It's T. Higgins, that's T. Higgins is ranked above Travis Hunter, who I am pretty sure is, yeah. Paulson's rankings go Higgins, Hunter, Malik, and then Horton in a row or whatever. I think I would just start T. Higgins. I can't imagine benching T. Higgins and then he catches a random touchdown or something like that this week. You know that they have to throw because they're playing Detroit. So I start T. Higgins. That's rough. How do you feel about Shakir in a half PPR best ball? I traded Ridley and Njoku for him in a fourth. Did I do okay? Was that too light? No, I think that's perfect. Honestly, best ball league, Shakir is a great asset in best ball. And I think that this is a totally fine trade to move off of the age of Ridley, to move off of the unknown to the long term of David Njoku after his contract expires at the end of the year. And you could just go get Khalil Shakir, who's been good 2 or 3 times already this year. So no, I think he did well. I would take Shakir. The first answer that came to my mind when I read this, because I could list off like all the veterans and stuff like that, but in a kind of snarky way, but also, truth be told, maybe the right answer, or at least the answer, like not so much the right answer, but the answer that I would legitimately tell you, but I just thought of it for initially in my brain because in a kind of snarky attitude, was the best running backs to target for rebuilds in trades are future rookie draft picks. So I would. Oh, Cash Money. I don't even know if you're still here. I just saw this now. I was only reading the super chat. So yeah, if Kyron dropped 31 and you need a boom game, then the answer is Khalil Shakir. So hopefully I explained that well enough to that you understood that. But if you're still here, just as a confirmation on that, I would play Khalil Shakir then if you need a big week and sit Jordan Mason, because I think Shakir's upside is higher than Jordan Mason's this week against Cleveland. Now back to John. Um, yeah, the best running backs to target for rebuilds are future rookie draft picks that you then draft rookie running backs. Because honestly, like it's if you're rebuilding, you should not really have running backs on your team unless they're cheap enough running backs who aren't really producing right now, um, that have the upside to hit. Like a lot of handcuffs are really good running backs to roster in rebuilds because um, they're so cheap to get. They're not going to produce at all, so they're not going to hurt your rebuild in the sense of giving you production that's going to hurt your first round pick from not being early or the potential 101. But when an injury does happen and you're able to then trade them away for somewhat of an ROI that you can get a third, a couple of thirds, maybe even a second, depending on who the player is or the injury ahead of them. Um, those are the best running backs to roster. Like actual NFL veteran running backs to roster and rebuilds are handcuffs. More so than like I could just be like, oh yeah, go buy RJ Harvey right now because he's kind of cheap and he's a rookie and um, Caleb Johnson's probably a really good name if you wanted an actual veteran because Caleb Johnson is kind of in that handcuff range where you're waiting on him to do something more. And if he does do something more, then you can actually then reevaluate at that time. Okay, is this actually what Caleb Johnson is going to be? And I can keep him when I'm actually competing, or should I trade him away on this kind of increased value because of the situation that he's found himself in, depending on when that actually happens. So it would just be handcuffs like that would be the best running backs to target to actually roster NFL running backs to roster on your rebuild. Um, and then, truthfully, the best way I think to buy running backs to get out of a rebuild is to draft rookie running backs. When your team is ready for running backs, when you've built up your quarterback position in Superflex and your wide receiver position for sure in any league, and you're ready to say, I think my team is competitive. I just need to go get running backs, draft rookie running backs, and then wait in season for your team to actually tell you that they're going to compete before you actually trade any more future draft capital for veteran running backs. Because I remember we had that question last week where it was like, hey, I tried to push my chips in the offseason. Now I don't have any draft picks, and my team consists of Brian Thomas Jr., Lad McConkey. I lost James Conner. I lost, and I also had Trey Benson. Now I lost him too. And then, it's like injuries can happen, situations can happen, and they don't necessarily work out. So pushing your chips in the offseason before your team even tells you that they're ready to compete, you just think that they're a good team on paper, is not smart to do. So rebuilding running backs are handcuffs that you can then flip for an ROI or future draft picks that you then draft rookies from when your team is kind of ready to push into a compete window. So yeah, that was so funny because like I read your question in my head. It was like, what's the best running backs? And like the first thing that came to mind was like, oh well, actually the best running backs to roster are draft picks, draft rookies. So I kind of said it like very snarkily, but it ended up like I think that's the legitimate answer that I would tell anyone. So that's my answer, John. So I appreciate the question too, because I like these kind of questions as well. You can dive into more of the theory of dynasty too. So glad you liked it. What we got? What we got? Are we dropping the cards running backs to get Rico? I would start Rico over either one of the two running backs this week. Now the other issue then comes. We know Trey Benson is going to be out for at least 4 weeks, maybe even up to 6. They said. Whereas Chuba could be back next week in week 6 to where dropping the potential starter for Arizona for the next month or so may not be worth the better start, so to speak, right now in Rico Dowdle. So um, I think it just kind of depends on what your risk profile is, or how confident you are in Rico versus the other starters this week. I probably, if you wanted to call your shot and say, I think Michael Carter's the starter, or I think Amari DiMarcado is the starter, then you want to drop the other one. I'm okay with that, to then pick up Rico Dowdle and then play Rico over the other Cardinal running back that you kept this week. I'm cool with that because I think Rico's a better start. But um, I feel like that might hurt your chances of actually having one good running back for the next 4 to 6 weeks if you choose the wrong running back for Arizona to drop. And then you don't have Rico because Chuba's back in week 6, and then Rico's just back to being a handcuff, and then you pick the wrong Arizona Cardinal starter, and then you only have this other handcuff that's no longer valuable. So long story short, I would probably keep both Cardinals running backs and then start whichever one you think is better this week, because they do have a good matchup in Tennessee. And then I would see what happens and see if they really tell you which one is better than the other. And then maybe you could drop the other one for another handcuff running back, or keep that other Cardinals running back in case the other running back gets hurt. It's a lot of, I'm saying the word other running backs a lot, but hopefully that made sense. I would TLDR, I would probably keep both Cardinals running backs this week over Rico, and then just play whoever you think is the better of the two. Vinny's down bad, he says. Lost neighbors from hopeful contender to retool and on next season. Just leave ATM for my first back, though. Any thoughts on what to get back for Fields? A first-round pick. Immediately, if you were able to trade Justin Fields for a first-round pick, that would be an auto-accept every single time. Doesn't matter where the first is going to be. Doesn't matter if it's in 26 or 27. Honestly, I'd probably take a 28 first over Justin Fields, especially if the alternative is like a 26 second or multiple seconds or something. Oliver's not having a good time downstairs. I don't know if you can hear it. He's in a weird phase right now. Any first round pick would be I would offer every single competing team Fields for a first, especially if that team really needs another quarterback. Assuming that this is super flex. So if it's one quarterback, then you're probably just going to be, 10 team super flex. I see it. Any first round pick would do over the next year or two. And Vinny gives a DLF Discord. There's two different Discords too. There's DLF Discord, and then there's the DLF YouTube Discord. You can see you'll know the difference by the logo of the server. I should change the background, honestly. But the big DLF Discord that has like thousands and thousands of people in it is just the blue background with the white DLF logo. Then I'll call it my DLF YouTube Discord. I'm in both of them, and if you tag me in both, I'll answer either one. But the DLF YouTube Discord is the same blue with the white DLF background or DLF logo, blue background, DLF logo, and it has the little YouTube logo in the middle. So you'll see a little bit of red on the blue, and that's the DLF YouTube one. I just separated the two because I wanted to focus more on my specific audience rather than the bigger DLF one. But I'm in both of them, so if you tag me in a question on either one, I'll answer. But I give personal. No, what am I trying to say? I like my own. The YouTube one I like more better. Anyway, Portugal Soccer 7. I like the handle. 12-man PPR rest of season. Who wins this deal? Kamara for Zay Flowers or Kamara and Sharp for Zay and Diggs? And this is redraft. I would rather have the first one, Kamara for Zay Flowers. I would rather keep Charbonnet over Stephon Diggs. So I'd rather just do Kamara for Zay Flowers, and I would make that deal. I'll take Zay. Yep, final answer. Kevin Ridley's going to be questionable. Says he feels good about where Tyjae Spears is. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I benched Pollard for Rico this week because I wasn't sure if Tyjae Spears was how much he was going to affect Pollard. Pollard has been really good and has gotten a lot of volume, but he hasn't been all that great from a fantasy standpoint because that offense sucks. So I'm personally sitting Pollard for Rico this week in a league. So we'll see. Re-rank the 2025 first round rookies. Ooh, okay. I had this as a video idea once we got past like the halfway point, or maybe up and around Thanksgiving, maybe. I'm going to go from a super flex standpoint. So it would be Ashton Genty, Omarion Hampton, Teteroa McMillan. That feels pretty chalk. Then I would go Emeka Ibuka, Tyler Warren, be my 105. This is still in a super flex setting. Then I would go. Yeah, I think I'm cool with Tyler Warren at 105. And then Judkins would be 6. That's kind of crazy. The fact that he was kind of 106, 107 anyway, and he hasn't moved, even though he's been phenomenal. I could see him vaulting up into the top 5, but I think I'd prefer. Tyler Warren's been an absolute beast, and Ibuka has been a beast as well. I think I still prefer those two. That's probably all a tier. Is Ibuka, Warren, Judkins are probably all. They're really strong 4 through 6. Then I would go Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, back to back. We're at 8. I need 4 more. Am I missing anybody? Am I dumb? I am still going to do the video because things might change by then. Is there a way to? Yeah, I can just do rookie rankings just so I have it in here. Wow, they've got Ibuka at 101 on Keep Trade Cut. Judkins is still 6, so that makes me feel good. So yeah, we got through Ward and Dart are 7 and 8. Travion, I think, would be 9. They've got Scadaboo, Hunter, Golden. I don't mind that because there's not really anybody else after that. I think I would probably go Hunter, Scadaboo, Harvey, Golden. And then Loveland and Fannin would be in there. Then we kind of get to Woody Marks and Luther Burden as like the early to mid second. So I think, I said Ward and Dart are 7 and 8. And then I would go, what I say, Travis Hunter is 9, or Travion is 9. Travis Hunter's 10. Scadaboo's 11. RJ Harvey's 12. Or if it's Harvey, Scadaboo, that's fine. But they're both in there, essentially. Travis Hunter 109. I'm cool with that too. I think that last group, basically after Ward and Scadaboo, I think that last group is really up for discussion. Whether you still believe in RJ Harvey, which I do, or whether you want to buy into Scadaboo, which I am. Do you still believe in Travis Hunter? I do. Henderson, do you still believe in? I do. I still believe in all of those guys, and I think they're all good bets. Golden could jump up into that range. Loveland could jump up into that range. Burden, I could see jumping up into that range. Honestly, if Caleb Johnson has a really good second half, I think he'd get right back up into that range. You've still got, Harold Fannin, Woody Marks, Bashal Tootin. Alec Iomanner is getting in there. He's not like in there, but I could see him like climbing more if he does well. Mason Taylor. We just need some Kyle Williams, Rondé Gadsden, Phil Maffa. I saw Trax said we get to see Jaden Blue this Sunday. Your boy Phil Maffa is still on IR. I know. I really wish that he would get cleared because this would be a great opportunity if Miles Sanders is hurt and Jaden Blue's not could. And all right, let's finish out these. Is trading Nico for Pickens and a first possible? I would say that it probably is. Low key would probably prefer Nico still, depending on where the first is. If that's like a late first, a contender's first, I'd probably still prefer Nico, but I definitely think that this is very possible, especially if the first kind of slides any more mid. I think you can definitely do that for sure. Start May or Baker this week. I think you have to start Drake May. I think Drake May has kind of entered a point. I mean, Baker's there and has been for a little bit, but I think Drake May has just kind of entered this echelon of you need to start him every single week. Paulson has Drake May at QB7. He has Baker Mayfield at QB12. They are separated by over 1 point per 1 fantasy point, 1.3 fantasy points in projection. So I think you're at the point where I think you just have to start Drake May. I understand it's Baker as well, but I would probably play Drake May this week. Dylan with the $5 super chat. Thank you so much, man. Coming in here late. And Joku, not late as in like you're coming in here late. I'm just saying coming in here late to the later in the day, later in the stream. We've been over 2 hours. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Njoku, Schultz, or Mason Taylor rest of year, or would you trade Io Manor and Njoku for Pitts? I would. Is this redraft or dynasty? I'm assuming this is redraft, Dylan. One of the greatest sounds in the entire world that you never know until you actually experience it is the laughter of your child, and especially whenever it is your significant other and the person that you love the most playing with your child and making him laugh is the greatest sound in the world. That's what I'm hearing that downstairs right now because he just has Oliver was having to freak out, but then she started playing with him. My wife started playing with him, and he started laughing. It's the greatest sound ever. Sorry, I was pausing because I was trying to see. I'm assuming that this is redraft, Dylan, right? That's what I was waiting to see if. Sorry, Connor. I was waiting to see if Dylan was gonna confirm whether this is redraft or not. I'm assuming it's redraft. I'm gonna take this from a redraft context unless I'm told otherwise. I would probably. I don't care about Schultz in this equation really. It would be Njoku or Mason Taylor is the decision for me rest of year. I'm pretty in on the yes, it's redraft. Okay, cool. No, you're good, Dylan. I'm pretty in on the hope of Mason Taylor. I mean, he's had 6+ targets each of the past 2 weeks, had a really good week last week, coming into this kind of second option wide receiver 2 quote unquote role for Justin Fields. Behind Garrett Wilson. They don't really have anybody else to pass to. He has the pedigree for it. He was pretty pro ready coming out of LSU, second round draft capital. If you want to bank on Mason Taylor for the remainder of the year as these options and then keep Alec, I'm totally cool with that. I do think Alec and Njoku for Kyle Pitts is a pretty solid deal to get Kyle Pitts. So if they're, you're doing a 2-for-1 to move over to Kyle Pitts, and then you could also keep Mason Taylor, I'm on board with that. Or if you just wanted to cut Njoku and not pick up Schultz or whatever your situation is, and then just have Mason Taylor for the remainder of the year and keep Alec, I'm pretty on board with that one too. I think the best answer might just be you do the Njoku deal for Kyle Pitts, then you roster Pitts and Mason Taylor simultaneously to see if Mason Taylor can grow into that wide receiver 2 role for the Jets and be kind of more of an every week tight end. But then you also have Kyle Pitts, who is a top 12 tight end right now and can be a better start for you this week and maybe next week and maybe the week after until Mason Taylor really gets into that starting value. You know what I mean? And the fact that you have like Alec, as you just mentioned, might be your wide receiver five. Him and Diggs are pretty, I think, close. But I would never start Alec ahead of CD Lamb whenever Lamb's healthy. I would never start him ahead of Ted McMillan. And still would probably not start Alec ahead of Brian Thomas Jr., especially if they continue to build on what happened last week where BTJ looked pretty solid and the offense was looking better than it did at the beginning of the year. So I would trade Alec and Njoku for Kyle Pitts and also roster Mason Taylor with the empty roster spot that you have by doing a 2-for-1 to move over to Kyle Pitts. That would be my final answer. Cool. Not a problem, Dylan. Thank you for the $5 super chat, man. Thank you so much. Theory and AJ Productions with the $5 super chat. Thank you so much too. Let's see what we got here. Man, thank you guys. The super chats and the support for the past couple of weeks have been phenomenal since my return, I guess, in week 3. So thank you guys so much. Dynasty 12-man Superflex. I am sick of AJ Brown. I have Herbert and I want Quentin Johnston. Trade Brown 1-for-1. Have Amon-Ra, T. Higgins, Pickens, Diggs, Cup, JMO. So yeah, I mentioned briefly, like I just kind of said it in passing whenever I was talking about not trading first round picks for players 1-for-1, that I have not yet anointed Quentin Johnston as a player that I view as a first round, as a player that I'd be willing to trade a first round pick for, essentially. I am maybe like a week or two away from that, though, because watching him this year, he does look different than the first 2 years. And of course, with the way that the Chargers are just throwing the ball at the clip that they are, is so much different of an offense and so great for fantasy that it does make you feel like you should be buying into Quentin Johnston right now. And this might be a perfect example of a dynasty trade where you are trading off of a descending, aging, lacking in production asset for a ascending, younger, growing in production asset. And you're meeting the two at this point right here where I don't even know how to, the X essentially. One's going down, one's going up, and you're meeting them at that point. And then from the future, they're just going to continue to tail off on both sides. And you would win by having the player that is ascending rather than descending. So I think I would be willing to do this, A, because you have Amon-Ra already. So you've locked down your wide receiver 1 position perfectly. Pickens is helping you out a lot this year already with by obviously with what he's doing without CeeDee Lamb, but then even when CeeDee Lamb is there, he's a very good NFL wide receiver 2 in a high-powered, high-volume passing offense with a great quarterback, that he can be a very good fantasy wide receiver 2 even when Lamb is there. And then with a higher ceiling because he's of the type of player that he is. JMO is just kind of whatever. Diggs is kind of whatever. Cups, whatever. T. Higgins sucks that Joe Burrow's not healthy. He's just kind of whatever. If you are sick of AJ Brown and you want Quentin Johnston, I think that I can endorse a 1-for-1 trade. Even though like AJ Brown is still in the tier of a player that I would be willing to trade a first for right now, and Quentin Johnston, I've yet to anoint him to that level. Like I said, he could be there in another week or two. If you're just ahead of me on this curve, and you're at a point where I'm inevitably going to get to, and you just want to do it right now, I'm totally fine with it, because Quentin Johnston is the type of player that AJ Brown was 5 years ago, that Nico Collins was 2 years ago. You know, like he is that type of physical specimen on a team with a quarterback that is so elite that if this is the new Quentin Johnston, not to say he's going to be a perennial like 1,500 and double-digit touchdown guy, but like if this is the new Quentin Johnston to where he's a 1,200-yard, 8-touchdown guy moving forward with these kind of peaks of great seasons, yeah, you should want to trade AJ Brown for that player right now, if that is what Quentin Johnston is going to be moving forward. So that is a very long-winded. Everything that I say is a very long-winded way of me saying I can endorse trading AJ Brown for Quentin Johnston 1-for-1 right now. I'm on board with it. So thank you so much for the $5 super chat, man, and for your support. I greatly appreciate it, and hopefully this Quentin Johnston production can continue. And doing this deal 1-for-1 is going to just you'll be able to reap the benefits of that for years to come. What's this notification I just got? Taysom Hill and Foster Moreau are both questionable. Taysom Hill, the Saints' best quarterback on their roster. I joke, but I don't really joke. It could happen. I'm just saying. Ezekiel, trade Dobbins for Addison. I would trade. In redraft, I would probably lean towards the Dobbins side. In Dynasty, I would take Jordan Addison. Yeah, in Dynasty, yeah. No, thank you, sir. Thank you. I just remember this was going on. Dude, I've been here for almost over 2 hours now. Probably have another 5-10 minutes here. Let's see what we got. CD or Rome and an early to mid 26 first. Oh man. Value wise, I think it's fine to go get Rome. I don't think I would pay. I think I would take Rome in the first side for this. If you had Rome in the first already and you're trading them for CeeDee Lamb, I don't think I would trade them for CeeDee Lamb. Now, if you're the person who has CeeDee Lamb and now you're asking, should I trade and break up CeeDee Lamb into Rome in an early to mid first? I think that's a tougher decision because CeeDee Lamb's just so good, man. But Rome Odunze seems to be doing really well too. I don't think that there's necessarily a wrong answer. I remember I had a CD trade like this maybe an hour ago where it made sense on both sides. I will never say no to CeeDee Lamb, but I think the value is good enough to where if you believe in Rome Odunze and that first is going to be a really good prospect, potentially, depending on how early it is, that, I could buy into the Rome in the early first side on this one as well. But if you told me, oh, you have CD? Yeah, okay. So that's where the hard decision is. If you said, hey, I love CeeDee Lamb and I just want to keep CeeDee Lamb, by all means, keep CeeDee Lamb. I would never say no to having or keeping CeeDee Lamb on my roster, but I think this is pretty good value-wise to where if you wanted to move off of him and get to Rome Odunze and get an early first, I don't mind that either. I think just me being me, I think I would probably just keep CD. I don't know. One last year with the Burrow, Chase, Higgins stack. Nice. Started 0-4 with the Burrow Lamb injuries. And then Chase and Higgins are essentially injured because they don't have a quarterback. Then Evans. Surprisingly not making the playoffs, and you would get your 26 first back. Okay, I would do it. That's all I needed to hear. I would do it. Because that would allow you then to make the other moves that would be necessary to ensure that first is as early as possible, right? So if you're already 0-4, one of the probably bottom 2, bottom 3 teams in your league, and you don't have your first, you could be making other moves to just reload a little bit. Wait till Burrow gets healthy again. Wait till Chase is obviously good with Burrow next year. You'll have Rome Odunze. You can trade Mike Evans. Maybe you have any other running backs that you could trade as well, just to kind of reload and move towards the future a little bit. But it's harder to do that whenever you don't have your first. So making this move to get your first back, that's all I needed to hear. Fully on board the Rome Odunze in the first side. Should have led with that. I wouldn't have gone through the whole thing. I would have been immediately on the Rome in the early first side. But we got there. Would you trade Fannin and Henderson for Laporta and Terry McLaurin? How long do you think Terry is out? Man, that's a good question. I'm not exactly sure how long Terry McLaurin is out. It does sound like it's more of a week-to-week thing, and this would be week 2. They haven't placed him on IR, so that makes me think that he could be back in another week or 2. That being said, I would do this trade. I would rather have Sam Laporta than Harold Fannin. And McLaurin over Travion Henderson, I think, is a good trade because you're getting McLaurin's production. And I'm worried that I'm not worried about Henderson from a dynasty standpoint, or to say that he can't still have his second half breakout that rookie running backs or rookies in general kind of do. But I am kind of concerned that it's just like Vrabel might really not let him, or it might be later than we think. Like where some rookies, obviously some of them are breaking out right now. We might see RJ Harvey break out, in week 8, 9, 10. Henderson's breakout or might not be till like 12, 13, 14. And I am kind of worried about that, to where I'm not worried about Terry McLaurin so long as he's healthy. And if we assume that he's back in the next week or two, I would rather have McLaurin long term or rest of season than Travion Henderson, and I'd rather have Laporta than Harold Fannin. So, assuming that this is redraft, I would take Laporta and McLaurin. If it's dynasty, I would still take Fannin and Henderson, though. So that's the one difference. But I'm assuming that this is in redraft, so I'll take the Laporta side. 10-team dynasty, I give up BTJ, Quentin Johnston in a second. I get Gibbs. Nope. No. I don't even need to read anymore. I'm not doing this. This is the exact type of deal I would do in reverse, regardless of what your running backs or wide receivers look like. I understand that you have so many wide receivers. I get it. Fully understand it. This is an overpay for Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think that you could find other ways to just go upgrade your running back room than to pay all of that for one Jahmyr Gibbs, who dynasty wise, I don't think is that far ahead of BTJ. Quentin Johnston might be ahead of BTJ at this point now too. Quentin Johnston, I think, is more productive than Jahmyr Gibbs this year. Is he not? Let's see. Jahmyr Gibbs has, where is he? 59. Oh, that's standard. We'll change it to full PPR. Jahmyr Gibbs has 79 full PPR fantasy points. Quentin Johnston has 79 full PPR fantasy points. You have Jahmyr Gibbs already. His name is just Quentin Johnston in your wide receiver room. So then adding BTJ and the second on top is just way too much, man. As a contender, is it worth pivoting off of T. Higgins to Chris Olave? I think it might be. I would like to, if you could get just the kicker on top of Chris Olave to do it. But I do think, like, from a redraft standpoint, I would rather have Chris Olave than T. Higgins. So from a dynasty standpoint, stands to reason that that's probably pretty similar as well. That I would do that same thing rest of season for a dynasty league. And then Olave is younger than T. Higgins, so there's that. Maybe you won't get a plus with him. I would love to just have like a, hey, give me Chris Olave and that one handcuff that's on your team. So then I have a handcuff running back on my team. But yeah, dude, the marathon, I'm telling you, it's people be asking questions, man. I got to answer questions. I can't not answer all these questions. People keep asking. Where were we? Do you see David Montgomery startable in the flex? When do you see David Montgomery will start? David Montgomery, you're starting David Montgomery this week. I think you should 100%. This is a David Montgomery game. I think they're going to, why am I forgetting who they play? It's somebody really stupid. They play Cincy, of course. So we've seen how bad Cincinnati's rush defense has been. They gave up 100 yards to Jordan Mason. They gave up 100 yards to J.K. Dobbins. They gave up the 50 or 60 yards and a touchdown to RJ Harvey or whatever. I think this week is David Montgomery week, because I think that he can annihilate them on the ground early in the game. And then I think that he is more of the guy that's going to grind out the clock at the end of the game rather than Jahmyr Gibbs. So if you're not starting David Montgomery this week in fantasy football, I don't know when else you would ever want to start David Montgomery. So yes, I think he's very startable in the flex this week. BC's asking, is it too late to talk about Cam Ward is still great and it's all the coaching staff's fault? Asking for someone that traded 101 for 102 in a boatload and is now sad. No, I'm in agreement. I think Cam Ward has looked pretty solid so far. I do think that coaching staff is a little suboptimal. Obviously, his receivers seem to not be great. Calvin Ridley's not helping him at all. Alec is fine, but I don't think Alec's ceiling is like an NFL wide receiver one. So they need an NFL wide receiver one. And honestly, I think Cam Ward looks better now than Bryce Young did when he was a rookie. And I don't know if people think that or not. To where that when Cam Ward gets his wide receiver one, kind of like how Bryce has just gotten Tedero McMillan, and even though Bryce hasn't looked all that great still with Tet, I think Cam Ward looks better than Bryce now, and hopefully they get him a Tet earlier than year 3, year 2, whatever it was for Bryce Young. But yeah, hopefully they get him a wide receiver one. Tennessee's O-line has also been terrible, and the receivers, yeah, like you said, they can't catch. I am surprised that Restrepo hasn't gotten Oliver's upset again. I'm telling you, man, it's this age. This age is such a weird age. I am surprised that Restrepo hasn't gotten more work. So I just think they need better weapons. Yes. This is essentially it. I think Cam Ward is in a much better place than where Bryce Young was, and he just needs a better weapon or weapons than Alec and Ridley. They can keep Alec. They just need better weapons to where Alec shouldn't be their wide receiver one. Andre, who should I drop for Dowdle? I got Saquon, Bucky out, Marks, Gainwell, Ladd, Waddle, Kirk, Ridley. I would drop. I think it's Ridley. Is it Ridley? I think it's Ridley. Yeah. Theory says Ridley as well. It was either between him or Gainwell, but I think I would rather hold on to Gainwell a little bit because Ridley's just not doing anything. Kirk was another option as well. Obviously you're not cutting Saquon, you're not cutting Bucky, you're not cutting Waddle, you're not cutting Ladd, you're not cutting Woody Marks. So it's between those other three: Gainwell, Kirk, Ridley. I think I would drop Ridley. I'm not opposed to cutting Christian Kirk either, but I think I would cut Ridley. At least Christian Kirk, like they're seeing similar volume, aren't they? I don't remember what Kirk did last week. Kirk had 3 for 20, so they're kind of similar, but he had eight targets the week before. It's one of the two, Kirk or Ridley. I think CJ Stroud's a better quarterback than Cam Ward is right now, but neither offense is really great. It's one of the two, Kirk or Ridley, whoever you would prefer. Sorry, I don't have a definitive answer for you. Ridley, I think, has more upside than Christian Kirk. I will say that. If you want to swing for the ultimate fences, even though we just pooped on Ridley for a little bit there as we were talking about Cam Ward, I do think Ridley still has better upside than Christian Kirk. So maybe my answer is Christian Kirk. What would you trade Mark Andrews for? In Dynasty, like a second, if you can. That would be my go-to. Would just be, can I just get a second for Mark Andrews? Assuming that this is Dynasty, Eric. 2 QB league. Would you trade Dylan Gabriel for George Pickens, Omarion Hampton, Bucky Irving? Huh. Yes. Instantly. Any of these. That my look was like, you're going to be able to trade Dylan Gabriel for any of these guys? That's that's insanity. Yes. Any of them. Instantly. I would start Rico Dowdle over Stephon Diggs. That feels pretty easy for me. Would you rather start Stafford over Dart this week before the game? Because I chose Dart over Stafford. I do have I had Dart as my sneaky start over on the 4for4 channel this week with John Paulson. Now would I have played him over Matthew Stafford last night? Knowing what Matthew Stafford did? No, I don't think I would have, because that game I had bet on the Rams minus 6.5 that clearly did not come to fruition. My thought process going into that game last night was that the Rams were going to maybe not smack the Niners, but they were going to be in a positive game script all night to where they wouldn't have had to have thrown as much. Stafford might have still gotten, his like 225 and a touchdown or two and was probably going to be fine. But I think I would have still went with Jackson Dart prior to last night because of his rushing upside playing against the Saints defense. That's probably where I would have landed. Tyrone Tracy is doubtful this week. That's interesting. I probably would have went with Dart as well over Stafford because I did not expect Mac Jones to look like Joe Montana. So I was wrong there. That says it all. Yeah, Eric, Dynasty. Yeah, I think a second round pick is somewhere in and around there, whether it is an actual second, 26, 27, or some kind of player that if you need a running back, need a wide receiver that they're valued around a second, that's probably where I would go. Should I pick up Washington or Brashard Smith long term for Gainwell or Dowdle after this week? I would do either one of them. Yeah. I would probably drop, but assuming that Jalen Warren and Chuba Hubbard are back in week 6, I would probably pick up Washington and Brashard Smith. Brashard Smith more, I think, of the two. Although we will see that could change depending on what Malik Washington's usage looks like this week, and also Brashard Smith's usage. But I think Brashard Smith is a slower burn for the next few weeks, whereas Malik Washington could legitimately be the wide receiver 2 this week. And if he had like 8 targets, caught 6 of them for 60 yards or something like that, then I might be saying something different. Especially Brashard Smith just has, 3 catches, 3 carries. It's still kind of a 3-headed committee. I think Brashard Smith's long-term upside is there, but Malik Washington could legitimately step into that wide receiver 2 role right now in 2 days. So it might depend which one is priority at the end of this week. But I would probably drop both of them ultimately for the long term. Yeah, I would drop Malik Washington for Gainwell this week. That's actually a really good. I'm glad you brought that. I didn't even think of that. So yeah, because Gainwell's on a bye, you could. I would pick up Malik Washington of the two because, like I said, I think that Brashard Smith is a slower burn for the remainder of the year. That it will still take him a few more weeks to get into that role. Whereas Malik Washington in 2 days could literally have that role in hand. So I would drop Gainwell for Malik Washington right now. And then see where we're at next week. If Malik Washington still doesn't play, like he just plays like 40-something% of snaps, is still a big special teams guy. Maybe one of their, I don't even remember who else they have at wide receiver. They have NWI, I think, right? So what if it's like NWI is seeing more run or something? Then maybe you want to drop Malik Washington next week. They have Cedric Wilson. Oh, they have Taj Washington too. I forgot about that. And Dwayne Eskridge. Nice. So yeah. But yes, I would pick up Washington now, reevaluate on Monday and Tuesday, see where we're at. Sharbs, Bill, or DeMarcado this week? I would go with Zach Charbonnet. Paulson has Sharbs at RB30. Oh, he has DeMarcado higher. Again, I don't know if DeMarcado is there or not. If you want to start DeMarcado, I'm cool with it. Why did I say Sharbs? I'm not going to start Sharbs. I'm looking at Paulson's rankings, and he's got Sharbs as the worst of these 3. I don't love JCM's matchup against the Chargers, though. Do you want to play DeMarcado against Tennessee or Charbonnet against Tampa? What a question. What a question. I'm not playing JCM, I don't think. I'm cool with DeMarcado. Paulson would also say DeMarcado. So if you trust in Paulson the way that I trust in Paulson, Paulson would say Amari DiMercado. And then if that does not work, not to say when it works, if it doesn't work, it won't. It's going to work. But if it doesn't, you can yell at John Paulson. No, I endorse it. Amari DiMercado. But I would start Rico Dowdle over either one of the two Cardinals running backs because we don't really know, but we do know that, or at least it's probably going to be Rico Dowdle. So I would play Rico Dowdle over either Arizona guy. But I would play Woody over Rico Dowdle and Malik Washington. And then I would play Dowdle over Washington too. So yes, I agree. I would play Woody Marks and Rico Dowdle, keep Washington on the bench. Yep, I agree with you. Lots of backup running back options this week. PC's 1 and 3 have to bench one of these. Unfortunately, I would bench Chris Godwin. I would play Zay Flowers even with Cooper Rush there, and I would play Woody Marks in the same game, and I'd bench Godwin. And I'm almost positive that Paulson would say the same thing. He's got Godwin at 61. Yeah, he's got Woody Marks higher than that, and he's got Flowers higher than Woody. So yeah, Paulson would say that as well. Bench Godwin. Higgins in a third for Olave. I'm 4-0, but I need a better wide receiver until CD and Ayuk come back. Higgins in a third for Olave, I think is fine. I would prefer the third to be on the other side, low key. But the third isn't going to make me stop it. I do think Olave is a better wide receiver rest of the season, so a third is fine. Take Chris Olave. How do you feel about Ayuk when he comes back? Would you buy him with people getting hurt on the teams that have Ayuk? I think Ayuk can be really good. Obviously, he's shown that he can be a really premier superstar kind of wide receiver. But obviously he got injured. Who knows what he's going to look like whenever he comes back. But the fact that, Jennings and Pearsall have looked really good. Kendrick Bourne looked great last night. It's just, he just needs that opportunity. And I think that he could be a solid buy low potentially, but I don't know if I have the confidence in him returning to like where he was as like a top 15 or 20 wide receiver with Pearsall and Jennings there. But maybe he is. And I'm willing to take that shot, but like I wouldn't spend more than like a second. So I want to buy into Brandon Ayuk. I really do, because I liked him a lot a couple years ago, but I just don't know if the ceiling is still there with the other weapons that are there. And then you're gonna get Kittle back. Christian McCaffrey's healthy. I don't know about Brandon Ayuk. I'd be curious on what the price points are to buy him. Yeah, I said I would take any one of those players for Dylan Gabriel easily. I have Dak and Stroud and Lions defense. Should I keep both and rotate depending on the weeks? I think you can cut CJ Stroud. Honestly, I don't know if there's a week that I would play Stroud over Dak, the bye week, but I think you can cut Stroud. And I'm cool keeping both the Eagles and the Lions defenses, and then just rotating between those. But I would probably cut Stroud. I'm probably never playing Stroud over Dak. So there's no point in keeping him. Olave in a third for, yes, perfect. If it was Olave in a third for T Higgins, yes, I would take the Olave side on there. W content. Thank you, man. Yes, you should absolutely trade Alvin Kamara for Quinshon Judkins. Easy. Be ready for November 1st. I'm ready for the matchup, and Drew Aller doesn't look good. No, he does not. I'm not ready for the matchup. Penn State's going to lose. I'm not ready. I'm going to be ready, but I'm not really ready. I'm ready to be disappointed again, I should say. It's the exact same thing I tweeted out before the whiteout game against Oregon. I'm ready to be disappointed again. And I was disappointed again. Should I trade DK Chig in a late second for Jacoby Myers and Jake Ferguson? Oh. Oh man. Can I answer this one first? This is Rice and Judkins easily again, Joshua. It might get done depending on how they feel about Waddle and if they're sick of having Rashee Rice on their bench. But I would take Rice and Judkins easily there. Now back to this one. How premium? How premium is the tight end premium? Is it just a 0.5? Yeah, I mentioned moving on from DK, so trying to find a way to get off of him. Yeah, I don't mind the thought process here. That's what it's a close trade. That's why I'm trying to figure out what the heck's going on. Like a second for Jacoby Myers or Jake Ferguson individually, I think is really good. And then do you just break up DK from that? Oh, 0.75. Okay. Okay. I can get on board with this. In a 0.75 tight end premium, I can get on board with this. And because I don't know if I view much of a difference between DK and Myers. I think DK has a much higher ceiling, but Myers can get there through PPR points, and especially if Brock Bowers continues to nurse injuries. And you would think that one of the ways for the Raiders offense to get back on track and for Geno to get back on track is just throw it to Jacoby Myers. I'm cool with that. And then a late second for Jake Ferguson in a 0.75. I think I would. I think I'm cool with this. I think I would take Jacoby Myers and Jake Ferguson. I'm taking Miami. I'll take Miami. Looks so, dude. Carson Beck has revitalized his career. I shouldn't say revitalized his career. Like he was fine at Georgia, but man, where's he at this moment? 972 yards and 7 touchdowns. I mean, they haven't really. I mean, they beat the brakes off of South Florida and then beat Notre Dame. That's cool, but man, he did all that while also like not doing anything against Florida. Yeah, I'll take Miami. It's close though. I like FSU. My buddy has been saying that FSU has been underrated for basically since the season started, so he's been very validated. Stroud for Kirk or Smith? Smith. I'll go Brashard Smith here. I'm here for this. This is pretty funny. Do we? The problem is I don't think Georgia gets there though. That's going to be more of the issue. I don't think it's going to be so much of Miami getting to the Natty, but instead it's going to be can Georgia get to the Natty? That would be fun. That would be really, really fun. Let's see where. I think I'm gonna end up calling it after these next couple of questions. Was originally targeting Keenan Allen, but the owner wants the 201 and a 27 set. Yeah, that's way too much for Keenan Allen for sure. It's way too much. Trade Lamar and Achane for Love, Walker, Harrison, and AJ Brown. Wow. Also Fields, 3 flex league. Current players in flex are Marsh, Ridley, Judy. I don't know how I feel about this one because the issue is moving off of Lamar. Like I don't mind going down to like having Love. I would rather have Marvin Harrison than if this is a dynasty league. I'm assuming this is a dynasty league. I would rather have. Shut up, Tracks. Just nobody wants another Ohio State natty. I get it, but I just don't know if I can do this. Like trading away Lamar Jackson is going to hurt me so much. I don't have like the uber most confidence in Walker, Marv, or AJ Brown for me to really want to do this. I think I would rather just keep the studs and hope the studs can carry me while also simultaneously hoping that Ridley and Judy can get their acts together. So I think I would just keep Lamar and Achan. I get it though in the 3 flex league, but man, that's if this is if this is a redraft league, I'm fine. I would take Love, Walker, Harrison, AJ Brown. But in a dynasty league, there's just so much value in having Lamar. Or if this is a 1 quarterback league, I would also take the Love Walker side. But if this is dynasty, super flex, I would keep Lamar. This is Pollard for me, Rob. I just trust the volume a lot more as the RB1 for Tennessee than I do like Sean Tucker. If Sean Tucker came out and had 4 touches, I don't think I would I wouldn't be shocked. And if Pollard came out and had 18 touches again, I think you'd be sad that you didn't start Pollard over Sean Tucker. Malik Washington. Thanks, brother. Your content has been clutch for me this year in 4 leagues, 13-3 across all of them. Oh, dude. You love to hear it, man. Thank you so much. I'll take the credit for it. Thank you. But you're the one out there making moves and stuff. So, I can only help so much with advice and everything, but you got to be the one wheeling and dealing and managing your rosters. And the fact that you're 13-3 is a testament to you as well. So great job. Congratulations on getting to this point. Now we just need to finish it out. We need to finish it out for you. Would you add anything to Barkley to trade to Judkins? Yeah, in a dynasty, I would probably I wouldn't go to a second, but it's something around there, like an aging player that I don't maybe necessarily care about, or if it's a couple of thirds or something like that to move over to Judkins. I do think that moving from Barkley to Judkins is a super solid and really smart move. And I would, yeah. I don't want to do it with a second, but if you can do it with somehow else, I would love to do that. It's redraft, Tyler. All right, take the package. In redraft, take the package because if you're going to be without Lamar for the next, you're going to be without him for technically I think the next 3 weeks. You're going to miss him this week. Whoop. Oh, my camera is too hot. This is what happens when you go on for 2 hours and 45 minutes. All right, I'm going to turn this off so it's like that. You guys can still hear me though, right? I think so. I'm gonna rapid fire these questions, turn my camera back on, say goodbye, and then we're gonna be out of here. My camera's telling me I've gone for too long. Take the package. Take the package for sure. In this one. I don't want to buy into Isaiah Bond. I think he's kind of bad still. If you want to pay a 3rd round pick for him just to see what happens, then sure. I'm cool with that. But I'm not buying in on Isaiah Bond at this current moment. I would trade MSJ for a top 4 first, Burden in a second. Whiskey Traveler, this is Rico Dowdle. Sorry, I'm just answering all these other ones quickly as I'm thinking in the back of my head on this one, Larson. So I'm not ignoring you. I would take Jahmyr Gibbs on this one if it's redraft. I would keep Jamar Chase in Dynasty. Larson, I'm keeping Pearsall. I'm pretty cool holding on to Pearsall. I think he can be the long-term answer for San Fran. Cody, who are your top tight end buys? I haven't forgot about your other question, Larson. I'm still thinking on that in the back of my head. It would be Jake Ferguson would be one. Would be a top tight end buy. And then I don't know if you can get like a Tucker Kraft would be great. I'm just looking at the Mason Taylor would be another one that's for more long term. Hunter Henry's pretty solid. Can't mind it. So those would be the guys that I would go after there. All right. Now Larson, let's see if I can turn my camera. Hey, we're back. All right, I'm going to answer this question and then we're done. I got to turn it back on stream. There we go. My camera is overheating. I would I would keep Marvin Harrison Jr. I think it's a really good deal, but then you're going to be hoping that that prospect that you're getting with that first next year is going to be as good as Marvin Harrison Jr. And my hope is that Arizona tears down this team throughout the offseason. New head coach, new offensive coordinator, new offensive system, figure this all out, target the crap out of Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that there's more upside with holding on to Marv than trading him off for all these other picks, because there's a possibility that Marv does do well for the remainder of the year. Then you can get even more for him for trading him later on if you wanted to. Or there's also the upside in the offseason that prior to the NFL and your rookie drafts, when this top 4 pick would, come to fruition value wise for you into an actual player, you're hoping that that player is good, is as good as Marv. But then there's also the possibility that, like I said, if Arizona kind of tears down this team, that Marv's value could rise artificially from that too. That his situation would improve, and then we're buying into him, and then, So I think there's just more upside with Marvin Harrison Jr. than there is a top 4 pick, Luther Burden, and a second. For both the remainder of the year, but then also heading into the early part of the offseason before rookie drafts. So I would hold on to Marv. And then, yeah, like Trax said, if Marv isn't that good this year, maybe he is a really strong buy heading into year 3, which I think he probably will be, depending on how he finishes out this year. But there we go. I appreciate everybody for hanging out with me for damn near the past 3 hours. And yeah, my camera started to overheat, so I'm hoping that I can get this outro in prior to my camera overheating again. But I appreciate everybody for hanging out. And make sure you hit that like button and the subscribe button, all those YouTube things. The DLF YouTube Discord link is down in the description. So if you wanted to join into that Discord channel and get other questions answered, moves to make, how to improve your roster, trades, all that kind of stuff, you can join the DLF YouTube Discord down there, and we'll all get you straight and right there. So I appreciate everybody for hanging out. Have a phenomenal rest of your Friday. Have a phenomenal weekend. I hope all of your fantasy teams win or lose. If you're rebuilding and you want your team to lose, that's possible as well in a dynasty format. So, but hope in general that all of your fantasy teams do well, and your NFL teams do well, your college teams do well, your bets do well, all that good stuff. And we'll catch you guys in the next video and next Friday for another AMA. Catch you guys later. Peace.